Working.
Good evening. Okay, so while people join, we're jumping straight into an interview today. So obviously you're not streaming on your end, Nathaniel.
I'm not, unfortunately.
So do you wanna? My audience already knows who I am. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Nat. I am the co founder and editor in chief of That's Why. And That's Why is a new kid in the game on social media. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok predominantly. And myself and my team of journalists are devoted to one thing, which is analyzing the news. So, what does that mean? We bring social sciences and humanities inside into the coverage of news to try and understand the deeper issues that underpin the wild, uh, confusing world we live in right now. So it's thatsy.media on Instagram, and that's why news on TikTok, THATSY, which is the letter Y. So follow us.
Yeah, the letter Y might be some confusing for some people when you just say that's why they might want to spell it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the wild state of the news right now. That is a pretty good description of of certainly the last month or so of our existence, if not more. Uh,
Weeks
yeah,
or
I
days.
mean to be fair, it's been where do you even start? Like, do you go back as far back as like the pandemic? Do you go as far back as like 2016 with the election of Donald Trump? The first time, do you go back as far back as like 9/11? I don't know. You can always like it seems like our generation is in for some interesting times, as they say.
Absolutely. I actually, if I had to answer that question, I think 2016 and Brexit Trump moment was probably the first acceleration in terms of speed, not necessarily in terms of meaningfulness of the changes we saw, but in terms of speed, it felt certainly uh, like it was the start. And actually, we spoke, you and I, the audience doesn't know that, we spoke like 6 days ago, literally. And I don't know what you think, but personally, I feel we have already,
Yeah,
uh, we're living in a different world. I mean, we'll talk about that with the Oval Office, Zelenskyy thing, the national UN General Assembly thing. We talk about that, which has not been commented so much, but
I
that
haven't
definitely was.
even looked at the General Assembly thing. To be honest, I was supposed to have a video out by now. I was supposed to have a video out by exactly a week ago, and then something happened and I had to delay it by a few days, and I'm still in my editing bubble trying to get that finished. So the Oval Office meeting I haven't been able to avoid. Like I had to watch that, and we're gonna watch the entire thing on stream later after this interview. But I haven't. I've basically been disconnected from news everywhere else. I've been like just focusing on getting my video finished.
Well, lucky you, because that's definitely been interesting. So while everyone had their eyes on Washington and Macron and Keir Starmer and obviously Zelensky, here I'm in New York right now, and here in New York at the UN General Assembly, at the UN basically, there was a historic, unprecedented vote that broke with an 80 years old tradition where you saw the US, Russia voting, and China a little bit, voting against European nations on the issue of the invasion of Ukraine.
Oh
It was.
yeah, I saw the headline. I hadn't looked into it too much, but I saw the headline. Yeah, no, it's like it's been a wild few weeks since the inauguration with the Pete Hegseth speech at NATO, the infamous Vance speech at the Munich Security Conference. And like to me, this Oval Office meeting just seems like going further down that direction, but it's such a an even more like the alarm. I mean alarmism in the truth, like not in the like justified alarmism after the Munich Security Conference was a thing, and weirdly enough, when I watched that, I was kind of underwhelmed by it. Not because it wasn't bad, but because it was basically what I expected Vance to say. Whereas the Oval Office meeting is a whole other level of craziness to me.
Oh, I agreed. I mean, really, I think we both follow the news quite a lot. I don't think anyone's anything saw anything like that. And what was striking, I mean, I guess the the sentence that shocked me the most, tell me what you think, isn't even the interaction between Zelensky and Trump. It's the moment Trump says it's going to be great television.
Hmm.
And for me, that's the most disturbing thing you can say, because diplomacy, we all know that good diplomacy, successful diplomacy, is mostly a behind closed doors affairs, right?
Yeah.
When things are dealt with between two rational individuals, and the agora, the birth of Mondovision diplomacy that has to do more with the society of spectacle, as political scientists call it, than actual diplomacy, is explosive. And the fact that he's seemingly doing it on purpose and finishes the whole sequence by saying it's going to be great television. Um,
Nice hand movement there.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't get the voice right, but the hands is there. Is is very worrying. I remember effective altruism researchers a few years ago coming up with the idea that if the nuclear Cuban Missile Crisis had happened in an era where Twitter was around, we'd probably all be dead, because because the emotions needed from world leaders to handle that would have been totally smashed by the fear and the anger that Twitter would have brought to the picture.
Yeah, and it's also like the whole point of doing it behind closed doors is that there's a big difference between what you can say publicly, especially as an elected official, what you can say publicly that your voters are willing to hear, whereas what you can say privately and say like, hey, look, I know that I shouldn't be saying this, but like this is what we're willing to concede on. You can't do that in front of, the world's cameras. So obviously this having this discussion in front of cameras was not going to be a productive conversation. And to me, the shocking one wasn't necessarily. Like, I was also shocked by the "it's going to be great television," but the other moment is when he says something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, but like I let this go for this long." Well, after there's been like a shouting match between Zelensky and Vance, Trump goes, "I let this go for this long so that you can all see what this is like," and that was also like a mind blowing moment.
It's crazy. And I guess one of my first questions to you is, what's our responsibility as content creators in this moment? Should we let grown people speak, and experts on mainstream television, and shut up basically, or should we actually understand this is a war of propaganda that is played on social media, and our responsibility is greater than ever? I'm not leading the question, but what do you think our responsibility is?
Yeah, let me just say this for chat. I'm gonna try not to look at chat at all because usually when I'm asking the questions, sometimes I'll get ideas from chat. But this time I'm getting the question, so I'm just gonna try not to be distracted by chat at all, unless there's like
Sorry.
a technical issue that you're warning me of, in which case I'll completely ignore chat. Um, so what's our responsibility? Huh. I mean, the thing is I think there's a distinction to make between content creators and people who like consider themselves social media journalists.
Hmm.
I kind of always recoil at like I first of all I recoil at any kind of categorization. I always considered myself a journalist, and since I've been doing journalism online on my own platform, it's like, do I use the word influencer? Do I the YouTuber? Like I never really, I don't really care what the word is. I'm just a journalist as far as I'm concerned. I'm just an independent journalist. Um, Obviously, content creators are going to make content, entertainment out of this. And I guess if all you're in for is entertainment, like there's always been political entertainment since forever. So I guess there's less of a responsibility there. What I feel like my responsibility is well, it's two things. It's one, like both of my responsibilities come from the fact that I have a lot of time to do this. So because I have a lot of time to follow the news and to always like watch like the entire, for example, 2 hour um, meeting in the Oval Office instead of watching like a snippet or two,
Hmm.
I get to have a little bit more of a deeper understanding than most people who have a full time job. Like this is my full time job basically, and so it's both like from doing this every day for months and years and year after year, I start to build up an understanding that most people can't have because they can't dedicate all that time. And also on a day-to-day basis, I'm absorbing all of these things so I get to like connect some of the dots. So what I try to do is like present some of the context that people don't necessarily get from just watching quick headlines somewhere while they're doing their job, while they're on their way home and listening to like a quick news podcast. So yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult thing because in today's world, like it's the attention economy, and the news is competing with content creators who are just doing entertainment or video games or Netflix series or all of that. So trying to make news and information, and especially political news in the political context that we're in right now, which we'll get into it as well, trying to make that entertaining and worth the trade-off of not being watching like the latest episode of whatever's coming out at the moment, Severance or something, I don't know, is definitely a challenge.
It's spot on. I'm really glad you're saying this because you're basically answering the question of why should we listen to journalists, and the answer is simpler than most people think. It's not even a skill thing. With all due respect to you and I, who are journalists, you said it's time. It's we are paid, and at least we have time to devote to this and to allocate to that, and in a way that most people who have another job don't, and that's basically it. So you shouldn't take what we say as face value, and you should always be critical, but at the very least that's our job and we spend time investigating stuff, and that's our contribution to society. I'm not talking about reporters on war zones and investigative journalists who have a very different job, and that is a skill based job. But ours, at the very least, is based on that. So we are basically everyday people whose time is allocated to that. So that I think it's crucial for people to understand this, and that is a key difference between what you would call an influencer who's just going to have basically the same understanding as everybody, same time allocated to it, and is just going to give opinions or feelings or clickbaity approaches to things, and journalists. Um, I think it's not an understatement. We probably hear that too much, but it's really not these days an understatement to say we're witnessing a historic realignment, and the world is changing before our eyes. Um, you see Washington moving closer to Russia, and Europe being potentially left on its own device. How do you see this? And maybe a point for our audience. It's a very interesting conversation we're having because you're an American who is right now in Europe, and I'm a European who is right now in the US. So we're bringing something interesting to the table. Um, we hear a lot of things. We hear it's the end of the post World War II era, so something fairly catastrophic. And we hear it as well. Uh, it's the opportunity for Europe to wake up. Is Europe going to die? Or is it going to be that great power it should have been long ago? As an American who lives in Europe, in Berlin, how do you see this?
Well, I've been a big backer of a big cheerleader for the European Union, generally speaking. I think that the European Union is flawed, and there are definitely valid criticisms to make of it. But in terms of an international organization that is really pushing, more than the UN, that is kind of like toothless, generally speaking, as an organization, even though I, admire some of the lofty goals of the UN. But the European Union is actually getting things done in terms of pushing for minimum standards of human rights, of worker rights, of, fair trade. I think it could do a lot more. And unfortunately, with also the political conditions of the of European countries right now, with the rise of the far right, I think we're going to see that. I don't know. It's hard to tell. It feels like we're at a crossroads where we could either also get taken over by this wave of far right parties and go in that same direction of more deregulation, more right-wing governments and corporations taking over and like defanging, like doing like the European Doge version and getting rid of a bunch of government institutions like that, social security, everything that makes Europe one of the best places to live in at the moment. I hope that it's going to go in the other direction. I hope that the Munich Security Conference and what we're seeing right now with the situation of basically the U.S. backing out of Ukraine. I hope that we're going to see Europe kind of finally accept that it has to play a central role in geopolitics
Mm.
and be the champion of democracy that the US claimed it was for a very long time, but was always in a very hypocritical way. And I would like to see the EU kind of, try to do that in a better way than what the US did and actually like put their money where their mouth is. That would be a best case scenario. I don't know if I doubt that we're gonna have something that positive. But yeah, no, what you were saying about the realignment is definitely. You still there?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, cool.
Hello. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
Feels that.
Just making sure
Well,
that
so
we didn't lose the connection there.
we didn't. I think there's been a overheating on my end. Uh, yeah, sorry
Okay.
about that.
So yeah, what you were saying earlier about the end of the post World War II era, like it's such an interesting combination of things because yes, it is clearly the end of the post World War II era, but it's also like the basically the return of the Nazis to call a spade a spade. Like we're having now multiple prominent characters in the Republican Party doing Nazi salutes on stage. We have in France, the National Rally is getting more like higher and higher results every year, and they have dozens of documented ties to neo-Nazi groups. The AfD in Germany just had their best result ever. They're not in government at the moment, but it kind of feels similar to what's happening in France, where it feels kind of inevitable, unfortunately, that eventually something is going to happen if the tide doesn't shift in the other direction. And
Mm.
with yeah, with all of that context, with the situation in Russia, with China, that I think is really waiting for its moment to finally do something, which it's been waiting for a couple of decades at this point, and it feels like
Uh,
they're gonna enter the game at any point. Yeah, it's
how do you see that? Because really, yeah, they've been very quiet, and we're wondering what they're doing. How would you project that? What's the scenario
well,
according
what
to you?
what they've been suggesting for a long time is that they want to take Taiwan back,
Yeah.
and when the invasion of Ukraine happened, I thought that was their moment where they were going to watch and see the consequences for Russia. And based on those consequences, they were
Mm.
going to decide if it was worth it for them or not. And I think they seeing that Russia is still stuck in Ukraine, seeing that even though the international military aid for Ukraine hasn't been enough to push Russia out of the country, it's been enough to definitely stall Russia and basically their economy just like hit a wall completely, and
Mm.
the war is keeping their economy going. But it's definitely in the long run this is going to be, I think, like the consequences for Russia are going to be long lasting, even if they come out claiming a victory with Trump backing their side in this conflict.
So you're
So
saying that China, just to sum it up, China is currently deterred by what's
perhaps
happening in
for the
Ukraine
moment, yeah.
for the moment. But with what's going on with this realignment, we're talking about the support, seemingly support, we don't know what's going to happen, but seeming support of Trump for Putin and probably uh, the US stopping its military support for Ukraine, that could be a shift for China's perception of its own likelihood to be successful in um, in Taiwan.
Yeah, and
Um,
the breakdown of NATO as well. Like if just NATO falls apart, even though Taiwan is not a part of NATO,
yeah.
there was always an understanding that if the U.S. went to defend Taiwan, that would be, at the as the head of NATO basically, or there would be multiple other NATO countries joining in, and it doesn't seem like I'm not too hopeful about the future of NATO at the moment, let's say.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating because it feels that maybe the best case scenario, if at least you're a pro Western liberal democracy person, is what's going on right now as we speak in Europe. And interestingly, what's going on in Europe is going on where? In London. So today, as we speak, there is this big security conference going on in London, hosted by Keir Starmer, with all the heads of the European Union. And I say European Union. So that shouldn't be happening on British soil, which
Fair enough.
exited the European Union. So there is something interesting going on where we feel that this confrontation between Zelensky and Trump is actually waking up Europe and bringing the UK back into some kind of alliance with the European Union. And the special relationship is between the US and the UK is de facto uh, still going on, but it's very clear that the UK is not relying anymore on or doesn't want to rely anymore on the security umbrella provided by the US, and that's a major shift. Now, it begs the question of whether um, the EU can defend itself against Russia by itself. That's what Trump asked Keir Starmer. Can you take on Russia by yourself? The obvious answer, I don't know what you think, but it's no at this point. There's the current military spending of the EU is all countries combined. So that's assuming they can work together. It's 300 billion. Uh, and according to certain experts, it should be of 800 billion in order to be able to sustain a high intensity war against Russia. Um, what do you think is is the right answer for those people meeting as we speak in London, trying to appease the US because they need it at this point, they don't have the 800 billion, or just building their own capacity regardless of the time it will take?
I think I don't remember the exact quote, but I think Angela Merkel said when she was still chancellor of Germany, said during the first Trump administration that Europe needs to stop counting on the United States as the leader of the democratic world, and that has been the indication since certainly from the re-election of Donald Trump, if not like the first election, that that seems to be the direction that the U.S. is going down, is going to be a Hungary type figure. Ironically, Hungary being in the EU, but kind of on the periphery of it in some senses. No, I think we really. I think I published I put out a reel a few weeks ago where I basically said, and I've talked about this on chat as well, and some people think I'm probably a bit too alarmist. Um, is when you take a when you board a plane for a flight, as you just did by going to New York, they always say locate your nearest emergency exit in the event of a water landing or something. And you know that there's like a 99% more than hopefully more than 99% chance that you are going to safely land at your destination and you're not going to need your emergency exits. But I think we as individuals need to start preparing for the event of World War III as much as we can. We need to locate our nearest emergency exit, like figure out what the plan would be if, because the point of locating the nearest emergency exits at the start of the flight, even though you know that you're going to land in your destination safely, is that if there's a crash landing, the cabin is going to be filled with smoke and the lights are going to be off and people are going to be screaming and panicking around you. So you need to already know where you're going. You can't waste time locating the exit at that point. And so if World War III starts tomorrow or a month from now or a year from now, it's probably a good idea to know where you would go, as that starts. Maybe you have like family, one country over that's a little bit further away from the front line, or isolated in the countryside or in the mountains somewhere, and you can join them there, and maybe like have a conversation with them and ask like, hey, would you
Do you
have a
have a
room
spare
for me?
room?
Yeah, do you have a spare room? Something like that, if you have that, or have what they have in places that are prone to natural disasters, things like a
Bunk.
closet full of canned food and bottled water. Someone suggested to me after I posted that reel that something that you can do that costs literally nothing. You don't even need to spend money on this. Is just if you store empty glass jars, maybe store them with water inside. That way you have drinkable water if something happens. And again, I don't think this is going to happen next week, but you never know when it could happen. And those are the kinds of things that I worry about on an individual level. And I think on a geopolitical government level in the EU, we unfortunately we need to start like unlike the 90s where it seemed like the end of history. um it seemed like
Yeah, it's not
war
ending.
between countries was basically over, and we still needed like minimal military spending just to like make sure that we were fine. Like we're in a position where, yeah, we need to start being ready for full-on invasions from hostile nations again, because that's happening again.
Yeah, just for the audience, The End of History is a book by Francis Fukuyama that argues exactly that, and was in the at the end of the Cold War, where the feeling was that the West had won and liberal democracy had won, and that was the end of history, and we should yeah
That
just calm down.
that didn't last
It's
too long, did it?
it didn't. It did. Yeah, I mean, end of the 90s, beginning of 9/11. That probably was the end of it. I don't believe it was ever true, to be honest, and it's been mischaracterized a lot. But it's definitely proving to be wrong. The alternative, which is the Clash of Civilization by Samuel Huntington, is arguably also wrong. What we're witnessing looks more like a clash of empires in a very 19th century way, where you have good old, territorial empires that are expanding from the center and building defensive glasses around them. So that's Russia and Ukraine. That's potentially the U.S. and Greenland and Panama, etc. There's an element of that. I just want to circle back to something fascinating you said, and I'm not gonna argue with you on the fact that there is a risk of World War III. Unfortunately, the plane metaphor, I believe, is great. That's not the likeliest option, but I think we all feel that it's an option with the irrational mechanics of escalations that could happen. Um, so you went into details about individual responses to protect ourselves and our loved ones, and I'm thinking as well in terms of um, not calling it individualistic, but the collective one. That
Hmm.
there's always the option to fight. Do you think we are a generation that is equipped to think collectively, like the Ukrainians did, wake up, defend the nation, whatever nation? This is extremely vague. We don't know where it's going to hit, and if it does. But do you think we still have the resources, individually and collectively, to, I guess, for sacrifice, to defend whatever is going to be needed to be defended? I guess liberal democracy. I guess maybe the territory. Do you think we millennials, Gen Z, fairly entitled, fairly comfortable, fairly individualistic, for better or worse? I mean, individualism is freedom. Do you think we'd be able to fight back?
I think I don't know that many Ukrainians. I know a few. I don't know that many, so I can't like speak about like all of Ukraine. But I think I don't think there was like a huge difference in mentality between like younger generations in Ukraine
Mm,
3, 4 years ago and us at the same time. So I think if anything, what Ukraine has shown is that when the circumstances warrant like need it, when it's that dire a situation, like obviously when the invasion happened in Ukraine, a whole bunch of people tried to flee the country, and a whole bunch of people tried to like take shelter and avoid the drafts and all of that. Some people, initially I think it was a large number of people volunteered for the fight, and eventually that ran out, and they had to do a draft, and they had to force people back in, which in the case of World War III, let's not kid ourselves, that would happen to us as well. So I'm sure if that were to happen, there would be a significant number of people doing that. But I wonder, what I wonder is what form that would take. We were talking about this last week when we were commenting on the results of the German election, of how polarized the younger generation is, in terms of like there's basically a hollowing out of central politics, like the centrist. In France it would be like the PS and the Macron party, or the in Germany like the CDU and the SPD is mostly older voters, and younger voters are going towards the two extremes. So I
Mm,
wouldn't I wouldn't say that younger voters are like less nationalistic, although I think there are like less nationalism. I think younger voters tend to go more towards the left than the like more towards the far left than the far right. But there is like still a significant number of younger voters who would go, like, who are like very nationalistic, and supposedly would be fully ready to take up arms to defend their nation. What I wonder is the other half, or whatever percentage of voters, are they going to take up arms to defend like just the idea of democracy rather than their nation individually? Are we going to see something like the some of the groups that popped up in the Syrian civil war? I mean, the
mm.
Rojava um,
You
group
want
was
Kurdish
like,
Europeans.
yeah, it's like, so it is Kurdish nationalism that is driving part of it, but it's also like this group that is one of the most liberal minded, one of the most democratic minded groups of people in the entire region, arguably, who were basically fighting not just for a Kurdish nation, but also for those values of liberal democracy and human rights that are not that common in that area.
Mm,
And so, yeah, I wonder if this is going to be a war of nations, or if it possibly would be like a collapse of nations, and more a war of like small communities. I have no idea. I'm
mm.
really not an expert on these kinds of things. All I can do is like imagine different scenarios, but I have no idea which way it would go.
Well, I guess Putin's scenario is the opposite of the one you described, at least the optimistic one. It's fairly clear that Putin sees Europe and the West as weak, unable to stand up for themselves, and entitled, and too comfortable. And so that's what he's relying on, and that's what his propaganda is trying to feed, and trying to feed also the division and the radicality and the polarization.
Hmm.
In the US, it's working. In Europe, it's working as well, but there is a big difference so far. Between Europe and the US is it's that the Russian narrative is incredibly weak, in France, in Germany, etc. Even when it comes to far right parties. So you have this in France, for instance, you have this candidate who was extremely pro-Russian, and this other candidate on the far right who was extremely pro-Russian. One was Eric Zemmour, and the other was Marine Le Pen, the National Rally. Um, and Zemmour, during the last election, when the Ukraine war started, supported Russia, or at least didn't support Ukraine. That cost him the election.
Hmm.
And Le
I mean, he
Pen
wouldn't have won the
also,
election either way, but
he wouldn't have
it
won
it,
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 but
it
he
cost him
might
something.
have undercut his rival Marine Le Pen.
Hmm.
And he was leading in the polls at this moment. He collapsed straight after because he sided with Russia. I'm exaggerating it, but at least he didn't side with Ukraine. Whereas
Yeah, it's
even
that
the
it's that I guess some politicians in the US can actually afford to say like, "Oh yeah, I'm pro Russia," but it's fairly rare. Usually, it's like I'm pro peace, or I just
yes,
don't want us to spend more money on Ukraine. Is the like crypto pro Russia position basically? Yeah.
yeah, but yelling at Zelensky is okay for at least half the U.S. population. In Europe, it's really not the case, and we see that today in London, where almost I guess Orban from Hungary wouldn't, but almost all European nations are saying to Zelensky, we trust you, we're on your side, and they're supported by an overwhelming majority of Europeans. including young Europeans. So there's a silver lining there that might contradict Putin's agenda. Um, I want to take a totally different approach. We've been in the catastrophist
Yeah.
scenario right now, and again, that's not it's probably not the likeliest scenario, but it's not an improbable scenario either. A lot of very moderate people actually are saying, but what? Okay, what's going on? Fundamentally, nothing is really changing. It's just the rhetoric of Trump that is unpleasant for us Europeans, but fundamentally, this the Europe and the US have always been um, not entirely aligned. Obama is the first one who said that Europe was a free rider, which is no different from what Trump is saying with harsher words. Um, and and a commercial and a trade war between the US and Europe is not new either. Are we overreacting?
I think okay, let's imagine if the rhetoric of let's imagine instead of Trump it was Obama in for a third term basically saying, "Hey, guys, you're costing us too much money in military spending. Like we can't afford to defend you anymore. That era is over. You're gonna have to defend yourselves. Like we can stay trading partners or whatever, or even maybe like we're gonna distance ourselves trade wise, but fundamentally, it was still a democratically elected leader who was still fundamentally, no one is in doubt about the existence of another election in 2028. If that was the case, it would be, worrying. It would be, a little bit concerning about, okay, well, we're entering a new era. We're gonna have to figure things out. It's going to be a little bit different. But the generally speaking, like the largest superpower in the world is still on the side of democracy, which again, like you can quibble about the US's role when it comes to democracy, but like generally speaking, I think that is for all of its faults that is generally true of the United States. What we're seeing now is even if Trump was continuing to do the same rhetoric as it did in 2016 of being, not quite as hostile to to the European Union, but just someone who is like he is right now, fundamentally tearing down the institutions of democracy, fundamentally could just wreaking havoc inside of the country in a way that is just incredibly reminiscent of what happened in the first 53 days of Hitler's rise to power. Like they said, like is often pointed out these days, when Hitler turned Germany from a democracy into a dictatorship, he didn't take any unconstitutional steps. Everything he did was legal. And what we're seeing Trump trying to do is like doing that as fast, but while not following the law, not following the Constitution. So it's going to be a test for the institutions of the United States to see if Trump does what he's been threatening to do, which is just ignoring the rulings of various courts and saying, hey, you don't have an enforcement mechanism. I have all the police under my command. You can say whatever you want. I'm just going to keep on doing what I've been doing. And I think that is a fundamentally different thing. It's not necessarily so much the relationship between the US and Europe, which obviously is a part of that dynamic. It's more just the complete long-term damage that is being done to the United States as a force for democracy, as flawed as it is.
That's fascinating. We a little force feeding on that's why we just did a video about precisely that. What are the guardrails of democracy in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned one, the key one, which is the judiciary, and it's already doing its job. And what we argue in this video, and that's why THATSY on Instagram and TikTok, is that fundamentally for courts to have the power to oppose illegal acts coming from the government, um, a fair degree of trust and support by public opinion has always been key. So public opinion and the capacity of citizens to be vigilant is ultimately the ultimate gold rail. And the second thing you mentioned, security forces, so the army, the police. The other guardrail is going to be the capacity that individuals within those forces to say no.
Yeah, it's
And
the oath of protecting the nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And that also depends on the courts,
Hmm.
which depends on public opinion. So whether a general from the US Army is going to be strong enough to identify an illegal order coming from the federal government and say no is going to depend on whether he feels that the court will back him up if this goes to court, and whether public opinion will back up the court. So
Mm.
it all, if there are American citizens here, it all comes down to you guys. I'm not saying this is happening at all. So far, the worrying signs, but I'm not sure that's going in that direction.
Hmm.
But want to circle back to your answer. You said something very interesting. You said fundamentally the question is not one of realignment geopolitically between the U.S. and Europe. It's an ideological question whether the U.S. are going to still be part of what we used to call quite stupidly the free world,
Hmm.
um, and still be a liberal democracy. And that's the actual rift. It's not whether they're moving closer to Russia, away from Ukraine, away from Europe. It's whether the fundamentals of the relationship between Europe and America, which is based on shared democracy, is going to remain relevant. And there's this probably the only that would be a great reel. Start recording there. The only thing international relations has found scientifically since its inception as a discipline is that democracies don't go to war with each other. It's the only law that political scientists dabbling in international relations have identified over 100 years. So if the US stops being a democracy or a liberal democracy, what would that mean? That's an open question. But I found that very interesting that when I asked you about the rift between the US and Europe, you didn't put the emphasis on military alignments with Russia. You put the emphasis on whether or not they keep being a democracy. And that's I believe, fascinating. Although that doesn't solve the issue of where are we going to find the funding to face Russia, but it's definitely a key underlying issue. Um, yeah, I want to talk a little bit. We thought we would talk more about Germany, right? When we planned this last
Yeah, I
last
mean,
week.
we can hop into Germany, yeah, if you want.
Absolutely, and you did mention it. Do you think, like, you use the term Nazi? Do you believe it's what we're facing in Germany? Is it Nazi? Is it neo-Nazi? Is it crypto-Nazi? Is it not Nazi at all, but just far right? Should we stop with historical analogies because it doesn't show, it doesn't help? What's your perspective on that? Are you using the term Nazi as a wake up call, or do you believe scientifically it's what we're facing?
I think so. The problem is people wanting it to be exactly perfectly analogous to what happened, 90
Mm,
years ago. And obviously, over the course of the past century, like that ideology has shifted a little bit, has evolved, has split up into different branches. So now there's a lot of infighting between different either like Nazi or quasi-Nazi groups. But I think fundamentally, yes, we're still dealing with the same ideologies. We're still dealing with, at the very least, fascists. I think that is a term that we can unequivocally be using to describe most far right parties today and the entire MAGA movement in the United States. But I think it was to go quickly to the U.S. and then I'll go back to Germany. It was Joe Biden in that famous speech he held early on in his presidency with the red lighting in the background, and he said the MAGA movement is a what did he say? I think he said quasi-fascist, uh, which
mm,
um, which sounds like he was just saying almost fascist, more or less kind of fascist, but it's actually a technical term. Quasi-fascist is a technical term to describe like a fascist movement that doesn't have some of the um some of the more extreme variants of it. So it's like it would be like democratic fascist movement would be a quasi-fascist movement, a
Mm.
movement that is like follows all the ideologies of fascism, but is trying to reach fascism through democratic means. Like one term for that would be post-fascism, as opposed to neo-fascism, which is like revolutionary fascism, which I actually got wrong in a video, and someone corrected me on that. So to go back to Germany, I was supposed to have this video out a few days ago, and it's gonna come in a couple of days. But basically, what I point out at the start of my video on the AfD is that Germany has a very strong constitution to, in theory, ban non-democratic parties from existing in the German political system. So they've only ever banned two parties, and that was in the 1950s or the 1970s. I think it was in the 1950s. I'm not sure if it was 50 years ago or in the 1950s. Anyway, the SPR, the SRP, the Socialist Reich Party, and the Communist Party of Germany were the two
Mm.
parties that have been banned. The SRP was the Socialist Reich, as you would expect, would be like the descendants of the National Socialists of the Nazi Party. But since then, they've banned a bunch of other parties. And interestingly enough, there's there's a neo-Nazi party that they banned called the German Alternative, or Deutsche Alternative.
Ah.
As far as I can tell, there's no direct connection between them and
Mhm.
Alternative für Deutschland. But an interesting choice of names, let's say. There's a bunch of like weird naming coincidences between the
Yeah,
National
yeah,
Rally and other like fascist parties from the Vichy regime in France as well. But that's a whole other thing.
absolutely. Yeah, National Rally, I think,
Yeah,
was a good like neo-fascist post-war. Oh,
exactly.
maybe pre-war. I can't remember exactly.
But yeah,
Reference me,
so
but
there are inside the AfD was not founded by neo-Nazis, and it was not founded with the intention of being a neo-Nazi party. That is pretty much for sure. But I think what we've seen is that with parties actually being banned by votes in parliament saying these parties are non-democratic parties, we're banning them, and then other groups forming and being banned, but like being less and less explicit every time. Then there was one called the NPD, which is now called the Heimat, the homeland, which there was a vote in 2017 to ban them, and they decided we're not going to ban them. We're instead just going to ban them from having access to public campaign funding. And so
mm,
that was like one step short of banning them. And that was basically, it feels like a way for far right parties to range their uh, their um their rhetoric, to know how far they can go before they go too far and actually get banned. And it feels like a lot of what the AfD is doing now is that. So the AfD wasn't so yeah. I'm going back and forth. The AfD wasn't founded as a Nazi party, but what we've seen in the first couple of years of the party's existence is that the neoliberal, quasi-libertarian, right-wing roots of the party's origin, have kind of gotten less and less powerful within the party, and we've seen a slow, over the past 12 years, a slow takeover, hostile takeover of the party by proper fascists,
mm,
to the point of like the leader of the radical faction within the AfD now is someone called Björn Höcke, and this guy it is legally not defamation to call this guy a Nazi. So for people watching right now, there's a game that journalists have to play to not get sued when they're talking about things that should be obvious to everyone. Is the
yeah.
reason why, for example, when we saw the headlines about Elon Musk doing a certain gesture, is that they always said something along the lines of, most of, like, some of them actually like grew some balls and said what it was, but most headlines were something along the lines of Elon Musk made a gesture that some interpreted to be a Nazi salute, or Elon Musk made a gesture that looked like a Nazi salute, because if they say Elon Musk did a Nazi salute on stage, they could potentially be sued by the richest man on earth, which would not be a nice thing to do. And
Yeah.
so, generally speaking, when we're talking about the AfD, we have to like measure our words, and we can't really say this is a neo-Nazi party, but we can actually legally say Björn Höcke, the leader of the radical faction inside the AfD, is a Nazi. It is not it is legally not defamation to say he's a Nazi. Not only have they ruled on whether we can call him a Nazi, they've also fined him twice for using a Nazi slogan, which is Alles für Deutschland, everything for
Mm,
Germany. which was a part of
That's
the slogan of the SA, which is the paramilitary branch of the Nazis, back when they were on the rise. And very funny is the kind of the interplay between the supposedly not Nazi side of the party and the radical side of the party. Is that while Björn Höcke was being sentenced for using that Alles für Deutschland slogan, you had Alice Weidel, the supposedly not Nazi side of the party, making a speech in front of a giant banner that said Alice for Deutschland, Alice being her name. And
they have
I'm
humor. You got to give them that.
yeah, I'm not even mad because that's genius. That's genius advertising. But it shows you like how they're not really ashamed about it, whether it's trolling or whether they actually believe it. Clearly, there are people in the party who actually genuinely believe in Nazi shit. But whether the other side of the party is just like fine with having real Nazis in the party and kind of playing on that rhetoric of like using plausible deniability to say, yeah, we're using the same slogan, but hey, my name is
Yeah.
actually Alice, so I get to do it. Or stuff like, I don't know if you've seen that flyer that was just from the past few weeks. Well, that one
This
too,
one? Okay.
the rooftop, but there was the flyer of the when you put it up against a source of light. There was a window, a black window that became a Nazi, a Hitler mustache on the face of Alice Weidel, which was on the other side of the flyer.
Wow. It's fascinating. There's definitely something to be researched there in the use of humor and dog whistle and, as you said, plausible deniability, um, and irony and sarcasm, which has become a tool of the far right, which is, I guess, extremely new. I don't believe in the 30s they were really funny. Now they generally are. I mean, that's one of the ways they evade criticism and lawsuits. And there's something to be researched about that. And I'm actually meaning to go to the Trump Tower later today to talk to the impersonators. They're always in front of the Trump
Mm.
Towers in New York. Um, there's it reminds me of something Irving Goffman, who's a sociologist, said, is that humor is a discursive um, shield. I'm not sure he said that way, but humor is shielded from criticism by the fact it is humor. And I believe the fact Elon Musk the other day said legalize comedy um, is out of nowhere, and the critique that the conservatives everywhere and the Republicans have been making against woke people or Democrats in general, that they can't take a laugh anymore, and we can't laugh about anything, is potentially a valid one, but it's also been weaponized to talk about certain things without facing repercussions. And there's definitely something to be more researched that. So keep keep watching. That's why, if you, or follow. That's why, because we're gonna work on that. Um, I started this interview by asking you what our responsibilities, our content creators or influencers were. Um, and you brilliantly said that we are journalists and our job is to spend time on those issues and communicate. Um, Most people can't do that, but what if you had tips for our audience, people listening to us? Thank you very much for doing that, by the way. Right now, tips to navigate this period. What would you give them, like sources that they should check, uh, reflexes that they should have in their consumption of news? What would that be? Three tips, say.
Uh, that's it's such a hard one. Um, I'm probably not going to be able to like come up with three tips off the cuff. Um, so the cliche is, oh, read a diversified, sources of news. I don't even think that's true anymore because like if you're reading a diversified sources of news and part of what you're reading is, I don't know, what's it called? One American News Network, OAN, which
Mm.
is like the QAnon, or if you're watching like InfoWars as part of your diversified news diets, I'm not sure that's useful unless you're watching it as a tool to like monitor what the crazy side of the internet is saying,
Which is valid,
which
which
is
I
a
guess is
completely valid
important.
thing to do,
Yeah,
but like
yeah,
you have to be aware of what you're doing. What I would say
yeah.
is try to And this is unfortunately something that takes time. Like it's something that I can do as someone who literally my full-time job is watching the news, is try to identify the blind spots of the news sources that you're looking at. I
But you,
remember when I like started to become a journalist, when I started to well, I started to become a journalist doing music journalism, but when I started to get interested in politics as a journalist, was around the time that so what was happening at about the same time was I might be off by a few months or a couple or like maybe at most like a year or two, but around the same period of time there was the second revolution in Egypt following the Arab Spring, and there
mm,
was the Maidan revolution in Ukraine. And before the Maidan revolution in Ukraine, I think RT was doing some kind of decent work, some kind of,
right.
they were not too bad pre 2014. They were actually um they could go a little bit conspiracy theory. They would talk a lot about UFOs, but as a kind of counterbalance to the US narrative, it was not completely insane. They still had people like Noam Chomsky was still a completely reasonable person back then. Not so much anymore these
Really?
days. But back then, he still had a completely valid, view on geopolitics. Um, and you had a number of s- people who would be fringe in a U.S. media context, who
Hmm.
weren't, fully. It feels like a lot of U.S. media is like supportive of the U.S. almost no matter what. Like look at what happened with the war in Iraq and how basically there were no voices in media that were critical of the invasion of Iraq. Um, so yeah, try to identify your sources of news what the blind spot is. Obviously, RT was not going to be able to be critical of Russia, and that became clear when the Maidan revolution happened. It was like overnight RT content, just like it was bizarro world. It was like walking through the mirror and all of a sudden you're in like alternate reality, like post fact world. Um, and like realizing that in real time and how that shift happened at that news network and a bunch of people resigned all at the same time was kind of crazy. With the revolution in Egypt, it was interesting because Al Jazeera, which I think still think does really good content to this day, um,
Beg to
it,
differ.
it I think they're a valid voice in the media environment.
Oh
If
yeah, okay,
if you're
yeah,
gonna
okay,
have like
and actually, yeah, for anything that is not linked to Qatar's interest, they're
exactly,
bad.
but
Yeah. So anything
so
that's
that's
not
the thing
Yemen, that's not Palestine. Yeah, yeah.
is difference in coverage between the first the Arab Spring Revolution. I forget the names of the leader, Mubarak or
There was Mubarak Ben Ali and Gaddafi are the three casualties.
yeah. So Mubarak was the one who was ousted by the Arab Spring. Then there was the
Yeah.
guy in the middle who was a Muslim Brotherhood guy.
Oh,
Also
yeah.
begin with an M, but I forget what his name was. See,
Wow.
anyway, and
Okay.
then there was the second revolution. Like the difference in coverage between the first revolution and the second revolution was super crazy, mostly because the guy who was installed by the first revolution was an ally of Qatar, and obviously
Mm.
that was going to be a big factor in Al Jazeera's coverage. So yeah, I would say like keep an eye on the blind spots of the media sources that
Mohammed
you have.
Morsi, just to
Morsi,
I
yeah,
just
that exactly Morsi.
yeah.
So keep an eye on the blind spots of the media sources that you have, and when your favorite news source is covering something that's in their blind spots, they're not going to be aware of it. So you have to try to be aware of it yourself, and in those cases, like go to an alternate source, have like at least two or three like slightly different sources that you can go to in cases where you feel like your go-to media source is dropping the ball. I think something like Ground News is interesting, not
Mm.
sponsored by them or anything. But
Yeah.
it can be an interesting way. I'm generally skeptical and not super enthusiastic of media companies that claim to like solve the bias in media problem, which isn't
Yeah.
necessarily what Ground News is claiming to do, but it's what a lot of people say that they do, which is what
Yeah.
I'm split on.
Paper on.
But
Yeah.
I think ground news can be a tool of can be a sanity check basically. If you think you're in a bubble, you can have a look at like the variety of headlines that are on ground news about a news story and go like, okay, there's going to be like insane headlines that I completely disagree with, but it seems like the majority are like going in the same direction. That seems to be like, pointing to where I roughly had. Or maybe like most of the headlines are in a completely different direction. You're like, oh, maybe I am in a bubble. Maybe I need to readjust a little bit and see a different perspective, or at least understand what that perspective is. That wasn't three
Absolutely.
pieces of advice, but it's the best I can do.
It's great. I mean, really, the blind spot approach is excellent. Basically, if I sum it up, just if you're watching Al Jazeera, know that they're involved in the conflict in Yemen and Israel Palestine. So when they cover those things, diversify.
Yeah.
If you're watching Russia today, know that Ukraine is probably not going to be the best info you're going to get from them, etc. Um, and on the polarization, actually, we are launching next week on That's Why a new format called One Story, Two Headlines. And the point is, and we're comparing what Fox and MSNBC, for instance, are saying of the same issue.
Only two
And we're
headlines?
not really trying to, sorry?
Only two headlines? So now there's so many sides to the same story
There's
that
so many, absolutely. We had to yeah, to simplify it. But it appears to be clear cut into mostly two lines. And the polarization is in the US at least between two poles.
yeah.
And the idea is really not to solve media bias because that is absurd, but to realize the manufacture of polarization and algorithmic filter bubbles. And roughly multiple times a week we'll post that. And actually, I'm probably gonna give an extra vacation time to the journalist that did that for us, part of my team, who's been so affected by it and losing her mind over the sheer um, difference and difference of treatment between outlets that fall Republican or lean Democrat, especially Republicans, and that's not equalizing the two. Obviously, it's just showing what the other side sees. Okay, so we're probably gonna wrap it up. We're slightly late on schedule. I'm sorry about that. With what we call the Doom quiz, and that I'm gonna keep putting you on the spot with that. Um, First of all, there's gonna be fill in the blanks, and if you blank, it's fine. We'll move on to the next one. Um, so fill in the blank. The one thing people should understand about international politics is
Oof. How long do I have to think about these? um,
whatever comes naturally.
how many words can I put there? Can I put in the blank?
No more than a sentence.
Okay. The one thing that people need to understand about international politics is, um, huh. I'm gonna stick with the theme of my next few videos that I'm working on at the moment, and I'm gonna say the Nazis are back.
Oh, wow. Great. The one thing that makes me angry right now is, and that can't be the same thing.
It might be the same one. The one thing that makes me angry right now is people who say he was just being autistic.
Oh, one. Yeah, yeah. The one thing that makes me hopeful right now.
I think a lot of people woke up with the Elon Musk Nazi salute.
Okay. What could make me question everything is.
Huh. Okay, this is gonna be harder to put in one sentence. Um, so the thing is, like, obviously, the Trump movement has. I'm gonna try to summarize this into a sentence at the end of this, but just to explain my thought process, the Trump movement has a whole lot of conspiracy theories. Um, so if we're talking about like Ukraine, the idea that Zelensky and his family are just like pocketing huge amounts of money. If we're talking about Doge, it's the idea that just like government employees are also like just like robbing millions and millions of dollars from the government budgets, like the whole QAnon thing and like pedophilia in the Democratic Party and all of that. If it turned out that basically everything that Alex Jones said was true for the last 10 years, like if suddenly like there was like huge revelations, I would go, you know what? I kind of had to
I'm not,
readjust my entire worldview on that. The likelihood of that is incredibly low. But if I were to say that literally nothing can make me change my mind on those things, then I would be trapped in like a logical um, dead end. So I need to like leave
mhm.
some opening for me to be convinced otherwise. How would I summarize that in a sentence? Um, huh. I mean, there's COVID conspiracies as well, like all of that. The one thing that could make me change my mind, what was how'd you formulate it exactly? Was it
I
that?
think what could make me question everything.
Question everything
Yeah.
is if QAnon conspiracies turned out to be real. I would say that maybe. I don't know. I don't know if that's the best one to like focus on, but yeah.
That at least encapsulates it, and it's something we've been obsessed with recently, and that's why is the difference between conspiratorial thinking and critical thinking, and that there's definitely a fine line, but there's also a big difference.
Hmm.
In this, it's a difference of scope. Mostly, there has been conspiracies in history, um, but all of them have been very specific in the pursuit of one financial or political aim, and the large, world conspiracies
Yeah,
tend
like
to also
specific, like faking the moon landing. No, I'm joking.
so
I'm
that
joking.
that I don't think you can call that great point. Actually, I don't think you can call that specific because for it to be believed that would necessarily require a worldwide conspiracy.
Yeah,
Because
or just
it
like a
would
really good
involve.
Stanley Kubrick direction. Anyway.
Yeah, it's not that good actually, because the flag thing and stuff.
Hmm.
He wasn't that good. Kubrick would have done a better job. Um, okay, humor, guys, for whoever is watching this, and we can be canceled for
Hmm.
conspiracy theories by saying stuff like that. Um, what us French people call second degré.
Hmm.
Now that you Google it. Um, okay, so let's continue with the Doom quiz. Worst threat on Earth right now. Don't take it long.
No, I'm gonna go with I'm still gonna go with climate change. I think the long run that is like I think the threat right now is we're gonna get distracted by World War III,
Mm.
and by the time we get all of that sorted out, climate change is like completely irreversible, and we're all fucked from that. I think we can't sleep on climate change while we're sorting out our global politics.
Great answer. Excellent answer. I didn't actually agree with that, and that's true of every existential peril that we face right now. But climate change is probably the most likely. Okay, so 4 questions. Snap recommendations. One book you recommend our audience to read.
One book. Huh. Let me think.
So if there's going to be one book, one TV show, one quote, and one content creator other than That's Why and Barely Informed.
A few months ago, I would have said a book that I read not that like a couple years ago called "The Despot's Accomplice,"
Well,
which was really good about how the U.S. foreign policy, is stated to be like pro-democracy, but in fact, it's much more pro-stability, even if stability means backing dictatorships in a
mm-hmm.
bunch of cases. Um, I feel like that book is almost entirely obsolete now, so it's harder to recommend it. Um, but the problem is I haven't been reading that many books on that I would consider to be up to date right now. I'd have to think about that more. Can we do the other ones and then I'll try to get
Absolutely,
back to the book.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. One TV show.
One TV show, Andor, is my favorite right now.
Oh, nice. One quote you find helpful in navigating this movement.
Oof. Okay, I know that I would come up with a different one if I had more time to think about it, but just because I heard it in a podcast earlier today, I'm gonna go with the J.R.R. Tolkien quote, like the Lord of the Rings quote of I can't even remember exactly what it is. Give me just a second to Google it. Um,
Absolutely. We
wait.
want to get it right. Sources. That's how journalist works, guys.
Yeah.
That's basically Google.
Yeah, okay, got it. It's do I have it? Uh-uh-uh. Yeah, okay. All we have to decide is what we do with the time that is given to us.
Gandalf.
Yeah, that one.
Awesome from the Lord of the Rings. Wow, excellent one. Wow, that's a great one. And lastly, one content creator other than That's Why and Barely Informed you recommend people watching.
uh, one content creator. I'm gonna plug my good friend Rote Rote, who's a regular on stream. And we've been doing a lot of talks in the background, and he is just very, very good at analyzing the current geopolitical context. He has he just started a podcast which is still in its infancy, and I still think it has kind of find its legs and find its style. But his analysis is spot on, and he's growing a lot right now. He's still, roughly the same size as me, but he's growing really fast, and I think he deserves it.
Wonderful. We'll check him out. Well, that's a wrap.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
And thanks to your audience. I hope they liked it.
I can
And
start
you can
paying
follow
attention to
us.
chat again and not get distracted. I probably missed a bunch of messages there.
Thanks for being patient with the chat. And yeah, follow us. That's why THATSY
Oh, by the
dot
way,
media.
I didn't end up. Did you already stop the recording?
I didn't stop it. No.
Okay, I didn't
Oh
get to
yeah.
the book.
Yeah, go for it.
I'll be right back. Let me go check what's on my bedside, and I'll be right back.
Sure. Can't wait.
It's too hard a decision, man. I have like five ones that I can recommend. I'm gonna say, um, yeah, right now the one that I'm fascinated by. Again, this is not particularly up to date, but the one that I'm reading at the moment that I'm finding a lot of interesting things in is one called Pegasus, by a
Hmm.
group of French journalists who were among the people who uncovered the scandal of the Israeli technology company that was basically
Yeah.
that invented spying software that spied on basically everyone in the world. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that book is not only about the Pegasus investigation, it also talks about a lot of things that those teams of journalists were doing on the side. And a lot of it is like really fascinating things. The other day on stream from like a few months ago, I was talking about how there's a bunch of really, really cool stories for like TV series and movies in journalism. And one of them would be a concept that the people who did the Pegasus investigation also do, which is called forbidden stories, where when a journalist or a group of journalists get killed in the process of uncovering a story and they don't get to finish their investigation, the team at Forbidden Stories picks up the work where they left off. and try to
Wow.
finish it for them, and then they have it published in like 15 different media companies so that, to try to disincentivize governments or cartels or whatever from going after journalists, because when you kill one journalist, oh, now it's no longer published in one media, it's published in a bunch of them all over the world, and that's that's some risky work, but it's something that I find really fascinating and powerful.
Beautiful. Hats on to our colleagues, fellow journalists, taking actual risks
Mm.
uh, out there. We support them from our comfort of this types of podcast. Also very important, but yeah, without them we'd be blind. Well, thank you again. I'll let you chat with the chat. Let me know what they say, and bye, guys. It's been a pleasure being with you for this hour. I'm gonna stop the recording right now. Just so you know, so you don't close Riverside because it's gonna upload.
Okay.
And yeah, actually, it's been successfully uploaded. Yeah,
Cool.
I'll
That
let
was
you get
fast.
on with your schedule. Yeah,
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining, and yeah, everyone who enjoyed the conversation, go follow That's Why, and I will be seeing you around. Let's definitely keep in touch.
absolutely. Let's speak soon. Bye, Stan.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that was nice. That was a strange experience for me to be interviewed. This is actually my second interview ever as a content creator, and my cheap viewers on stream. No, thank you. Uh, damn it. Mods, if you have access to the Twitch, if you can block that person, I'm just gonna block them from appearing on screen in the meantime. Yeah, no, that was actually my second interview as a content creator, and the first one was last week, or no, this week on Tuesday. So that's, a new thing for me. So how is everyone today? Shunned to the void, exactly. Thank you. Let me get uh prepare for that Oval Office meeting thing that we need to watch because it's pretty wild. I was actually not in I was planning to not watch the whole thing until watching it for the first time on stream, but I just couldn't. I didn't have the patience to wait. I Someone posted the link. Oh, here's the whole thing, and I had to watch it. No, I have seen it now. Yeah, so I had initially only seen snippets of it, and then yeah, someone posted the link to the whole thing, and I was like, I saved it for later, and then last night I was working on the AfD video, and I had to put some I was doing the kind of work where I didn't need to listen to the video at the same time, so I just put that on while I was doing it, and it was like wild. Yeah, we'll talk about it when we get to it. Wild is several tiers of understatement. Yeah, no, but like I think it is useful to have the whole thing because you kind of see like if you're only seeing like the shouting match at the end, like there's a progression to that is like it basically goes off a cliff very quickly, but the building blocks to there are like interesting to notice over the course of the conversation. Um so yeah, and a large part of that is that everyone was performing for the cameras as well. To some extent, Zelenskyy was. I think Zelenskyy probably would have held like similar positions behind closed doors. Um, but yeah, the Vance and Trump had to be tough with him, even if they would like maybe there would have been more. I don't even know if there would have been more of an understanding if they hadn't been performing for the cameras. But yeah, no, it's we'll get into it. It's wild. Let's see. Watch later. Where did I put it? Huh. Did I not save it? Yes, it is. Okay. 3 hours long, but it's supposedly not going to be the entire thing. That's
If you want to do that,
sorry. I'm not even sure if I can jump straight into it because holy shit, this is going to be draining to watch the whole thing. Okay, so there's B-roll. Not B-roll, but like establishing shots outside for a really long time. And then it gets into it at this time. Okay. I went to see my grandma and she has become democracy's strongest soldier. She keeps watching AI videos where Zelensky beats up Trump and also says that Vance is Satan. Nice. I've seen the videos of Zelensky knocking Trump out with a right hand. Those are pretty funny. Those are pretty satisfying to see. It like maybe have you thought of the possibility that AI generated videos are just a gateway into an alternate reality, and that's actually what happened in the alternate reality? No, they are really funny. Um, yeah, it's something for sure. Should I? Is there something fun we can do in the meantime? Like just like can I get like a breather, a quick suggestion of something that doesn't take too long that I can just do to clear my mind before we jump straight into Oval Office stuff? It's like I'm like, no, I don't. Please get me out of watching Trump for an hour. I don't know if I have the mental fortitude for it. Maybe we can do. Okay, let's do this. What's that? Jew or Goy? What the fuck is this? I'm not even sure if this is TOS friendly. Let me have a quick look. What the fuck am I watching? Okay, I don't even know what the political implications of this is, so I'm just gonna put it on because why not?
תלמיד ישיבה הולך עם תספורת מעליות. זה תספורת של גוי, של יהודי? גוי. תספורת שוקו-וניל. זה יהודי או גוי? גוי. בלורית, זה תספורת של יהודי או גוי? גוי. מכנסיים, צמודים כמו נקניקיה מסלוסי. זה גוי או יהודי? זה גוי. שתי מקלות של מטאטא של סנוקר הולכות. אתה גנב! אתה גנב!
Fuck.
מה יש לך? למה את בוכה?
אין לי מושג.
אני לא יודע אוי! מה יש לך? גרביונים עם כוכבים. שמעתם? פעם כוכבים חשבתי רק בשמיים. הם ירדו לגרביונים.
I think we got the idea. I don't even know what I'm looking at. Okay, this is what we're gonna do for the next couple of minutes, and then we'll jump into Trump stuff. Cat. We're gonna do cat. Also, like the stream. Sniff, sniff, sniff. Sniff. Okay, the Trump stuff. Let's get into it. We can't avoid it. We can't avoid it anymore. Let's go. Whoa, that was a rough cut. Is it just gonna be frozen on his face for a few minutes? The video is playing right now. He's just lost in thought. Man, he is deeply thinking.
Good.
Okay, there we are.
Do you? And now I'm talking with my friends in Poland, and they are worried that you align yourself too much with Putin. What's your message for them?
Ah, fuck.
Well,
wait,
if I didn't-
this is not right. This is not the. This is like long into the thing. Okay, I'm gonna have to find a better link because this is way too long into it. So it should be. Okay. This is the one.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to have President Zelenskyy of Ukraine. And we've been working very hard, very close. So we've actually known each other for a long time. We've been dealing with each other for a long time
Arse the
and very
devil.
well. We had a little negotiation spat, but that worked out great. I think for both countries, I think for the world, actually, beyond both countries. And we have something that is a very fair deal. And we look forward to getting in and digging.
I love, like, okay, start to pay attention to this. Look at the body language. Let me see if I can move my camera just so you can see the full body language. Vance's body language there. He looks like he's ready to pounce. Like, look at that, the way he's staring at Zelenskyy. He looks like a bulldog on a chain, just like waiting to be unleashed. It's crazy. And it's funny, like, pay attention later on when we see Rubio. Like, Rubio, it looks fully uncomfortable and does not want to be there. It's hilarious.
And working and getting some of the rare earth, but it means we're going to be inside, and it's a big commitment from the United States, and we.
Trump also confuses, like, he goes back and forth between rare earth and raw earth. Raw earth doesn't mean anything. Rare earth minerals or just rare earth is the correct term, but he probably doesn't really know what that is. So
Appreciate working with you very much, and we will continue to do that. We have had some very good discussions with
Raw
Russia.
earth.
I spoke with President Putin, and we're going to try and bring this to a close. It's something that you want and that he wants. We have to negotiate a deal, but we've started the confines of a deal, and I think something can happen. The big thing is the number of soldiers, mostly at this point, but soldiers being killed. You're losing thousands of soldiers. On both sides, we're losing a lot of soldiers, and we want to see it stop. And we want to see the money get put to different kinds of use, like rebuilding. And we're going to be working very hard. But we've had a lot of very good conversations. I will say until we came along, the Biden administration didn't speak to Russia
can I increase the audio of the video, please? Yes, I can. Sorry about that.
whatsoever. They didn't speak to
Wait,
anybody.
there's a problem here. Let me see if I can make it mono. Where is that? setting, filters, maybe if I do this. No, it's not this. Advanced audio properties. Ah, okay, it's here. Desktop audio. I'm gonna put that in mono, and that should make it a lot easier. Because the thing is, like, the left ear actually is at normal volume, but the right ear wasn't at all.
They just allowed this to continue. And I will say that, I'll say in front of you, you've heard me say it 1,000 times, if I were president, this war would have never happened. We would have had a deal negotiated for you without having to go through what you've gone through. But your soldiers have been unbelievably brave. We've given them great equipment, but somebody has to use the equipment. They've been unbelievably brave, and we give them great credit. This was supposed to be over very quickly, and here we are 3 years later. So I give tremendous credit to your generals and your soldiers and yourself in the sense that it's been very hard fighting, very tough fighting. They're great fighters.
I'm waiting for him to finish the thing because I do need to point a few things out before we really get into this.
And you have to be very proud of them from that standpoint. But now we want to get it over with. It's enough, right? We want to get it over with. So it's an honor to have you here. Thank you very much for coming. We're going to sign the agreement at the conference in the East Room in a little while.
Who's this guy? Does anyone know? Is that? It looks like Blinken, but it's obviously not Blinken. Blinken was definitely not in the administration anymore. What is the fermented cabbage on about? No, the fermented cabbage is Liz Truss, remember? No, that was head of lettuce. Okay, so bit of context here. There seemed to be, so obviously first Trump administration, Trump was very, very much aligned with, not as explicitly as now, but he was getting closer to Putin in obvious ways. We'll get more into that as more of it comes up in this conversation, but like, you know, there was already like a rapprochement between Trump and Putin during the first term. That there were some people who were like, having like thought that it was an open question whether that was still going to be the case in Trump's second term, and there seemed to be some signs that Trump was open to completely shifting towards Ukraine in his new administration from like people who were knowledgeable on the topic. I was always skeptical. I've never really, but it's not necessarily that I was, you know, more right than they were. It's just that maybe I got lucky in that being skeptical of that, because there seemed to be some indications behind the scenes or in diplomatic circles that, you know, there was some possibility of Trump going full pro-Ukraine, depending on what could be offered. But the context of this meeting is essentially the deal on the table here. What happened was there was a conversation, there was a speech by Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, who, that's not Pete Hegseth, is it? It's definitely not him. Yeah, he doesn't wear glasses. So Pete Hegseth, one of the first things he said as new defense secretary was that basically all of Ukraine's demands for a peace deal were unreasonable. So Ukraine's demands were, for the most part, having the right to join NATO if they want to. Like, as a country, you should have, you know, you should have the right to join any alliance that you feel is best for you, and retaking control of their territory. Now, you can make an argument to say Crimea has been under Russian control for more than 10 years at this point. It's, you know, arguably that can be, you know, that could have been something that that Ukraine would have been willing to concede on, but at the very least, retaking control of the eastern parts of Ukraine, what's called the Donbass, that is, you know, at the border between Ukraine and Russia, was something that, you know, was probably a sticking point that would be unconscionable for Ukraine to give up on. And all of that, Hegseth immediately poured some cold water on and said, you're not getting Crimea back, you're not getting the Donbass back, and you're not going to be able to join NATO. Done. Like, none of those you're going to get. Basically, everything that Russia wants, we're going to give them that, and you're going to get nothing in return other than maybe a withdrawal of Russian troops. And what do you have to give, to get that is you're going to have to basically give us a huge stake in your natural resources. We are going to be, Russia gets to keep half of your country, and we get to keep half of your natural resources from now on, is the deal that is on the table for Ukraine. And Zelenskyy is in such a shitty position because his biggest backer, his biggest individual backer, if you don't count the EU as a whole, his biggest individual backer is putting him in a position where he almost has to accept that deal. The one thing that Zelenskyy at this point is begging for, the one thing that he's like, I just can't accept these conditions. These conditions are way too insane unless you can give me a guarantee that if Russia doesn't respect this, then you will intervene and you will help us out. Like, that's called a security guarantee. It's like, yes, this deal is the way it is. If Russia signs it and they break the agreement, then we're going to come in and fuck their shit up. That is the one thing that Ukraine needs, because ceasefires have been breached by Russia a bunch of times before, and Russia doesn't really seem to care about any of the treaties. Like, the whole reason why this invasion happened is because they broke a bunch of agreements that they had before. And like the reason why Ukraine doesn't have nuclear weapons right now is because they signed a deal with Russia a while ago. I don't remember when this was, that said, okay, we are going to denuclearize our country in exchange for you never invading us. And that is another one of many treaties that Russia has broken. So the one thing that Ukraine is asking for, that Zelenskyy is like, I would be willing to consider having my country completely fucked over in so many ways. Like, you know, Russia getting to keep half of my country and the US getting to keep the half of the natural resources in the remaining part of my country is the one thing that I need to be able to accept such an insanely shitty deal is security guarantees. It's like the US guaranteeing that if Russia violates this, then they're going to come in and actually end it once and for all. And that's the thing that is not on the table. Like the literally the deal that is on the table for Zelenskyy right now is, hey, your country gets fucked and you get nothing in return other than maybe Russia for the moment withdraws its troops with the possibility that they'll come right back in as soon as it's convenient for them, and no guarantee of any consequences for them if they do that. That is the shittiest deal that you could possibly imagine, other than just the US backing out completely and going, hey, Russia, do whatever the fuck you want, which is basically what Trump has been saying to Putin for a really long time. So that's the context at the start of this meeting, is the incredibly shitty deal that it's on the table for Zelenskyy, and Zelenskyy is so close to having to sign it anyway because the alternative is really bad, and he's just going to be doing everything he can to get that security guarantee added to the deal during this conversation, and it's going to go very poorly. Okay, now that that context is there, let's get back into it.
Well, right after lunch, and we'll be having lunch together. We're also discussing some other things, and we appreciate everybody being here. It's somewhat of an exciting moment, but the really exciting moment is when we get...
Yeah, the thing is, he has to kiss Trump's ring on camera, but it's what we were saying with Nat before, like in the interview before we started this as well, is like the fact that this is happening on camera is a weird dynamic because these conversations are not supposed to happen on camera, because now there's the added pressure of, I need to get these concessions, or like I need to try to get a better deal for me, but I also have to appear strong on camera to like keep the support of my people for both of them. You know, like if Trump appears weak, like if Zelensky gets aggressive and Trump goes, hey, like chill, dude, like I'm sorry or whatever, like yeah, maybe I misspoke or I should have, like Trump would never say that. But if Trump cannot respond in anything other than from a position of strength, and Zelensky also has to appear strength, because all of this is literally in front of
When they stop the shooting or we end up
this many cameras, and there's even more cameras on the other side. So they're very much aware of this and that dynamic.
with a deal, and I think we're fairly close to getting that, and an honor to have you, and please,
speed this up.
like to say something.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. President. Thank you for your invitation. And really, I hope that this first document, will be a first step to real security guarantees for Ukraine, our people, our children. I
There you go. Security guarantees. First thing he says.
really count on it. And of course, we count that America will not stop support. Really, for us, it's very important to support and to continue it. I want to discuss it with details further during our conversation. And of course, the infrastructure or security guarantees. Because for today,
Security guarantees again.
I understand what Europe is ready to do, and of course I want to discuss with you what United States will be ready to do, and I really count on your strong position to stop Putin, and you said that enough with the war. I think that is very important, Ben, to say these words to Putin at the very beginning of war, because he is a killer and terrorist.
This is the one thing that I think was it's insane how TASS was allowed in. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. This is the one thing that I think was a tactical mistake by Zelensky, is and keep in mind the other problem here is that Zelensky is at an insane disadvantage because this meeting is happening in English and Zelensky's English is really, really bad. I don't think he spoke any English when he became Ukrainian president, which was not that long ago. So this is like from a really, really new English speaker. I don't think he accidentally, because his English is bad, that he started to insult Putin. But I think with the knowledge of how close Trump and Putin are, coming into the Oval Office and insulting Putin, while that is something that he kind of has, you know, that is valid, like he is, what he's saying about Putin is true. I think that was a tactical mistake on his part, because Trump is trying to paint himself. Trump is like super pro Putin and trying to paint himself as this reasonable deal maker, like peace broker, and having Zelensky opening with insults to Putin was not necessarily the best approach, and possibly sets the wrong tone for the rest of the conversation. Let's go back to just listen to it again.
To say these words to Putin at the very beginning of war, because he's a killer and terrorist. But I hope that together we can stop him. But for us, it's very important to, to save our country, our values, our freedom,
Jesus. Marco Rubio there, just like, please, can I leave? Covering his balls in the most like uncomfortable position possible. Can I please leave? Can I please go? Funny thing, in this is like weird fashion. I don't even know how to describe it, like fashion lore or fashion tradition or whatever, is so suits are not supposed to be fully buttoned ever, unless you have a suit that has only one button. But if you have a suit with more than one button, the bottom button is always supposed to be open, and you're always supposed to open your suit up when you sit down, because the suit jackets are not meant are not meant to sit on a body when you're sitting down. So you always have, if you have a 2-button suit, one button is closed when you're standing up, or just you can leave it open. But if you're gonna close your suit when you're standing up, it's only one button closed. And when you sit down, you're always supposed to take your to unbutton the suit and be like, these two guys are sitting, or Trump is sitting. So this looks like someone who is not planning to sit here for an entire hour. he was just planning to be there for like, I don't think he was actually planning. I just think he wasn't really thinking about it. But like this gives me the impression of this guy just wants to sit for like 2 minutes. He's in a hurry. He wants to get the hell out of that room. And like, he just wants to be like fully covered and fully defensive. He doesn't want to be seen. He doesn't want to be talked to at all.
Democracy, and of course, no compromises with the killer about our territories, but it will be later. And of course, what I wanted, we spoke about it by phone.
There is Hexeth. Yes, I don't know who this guy is, but there's Hexeth.
With you about the drones production. We have very good drones production. I think the best one in the world for today because of the war. Yes, and of course, we need very much.
Yeah, that's because King Edward VII was too fat to button his waistcoat actually in the 1900s. Yeah, no, it's a funny, like, it's a stupid thing. I can't believe that to this day, over 100 years after that became a tradition, suits are still tailored to not fit people properly when they're fully buttoned down. I don't know why we hold on to that stupid shit, but yeah. Like, the fact that you have to open it up when you sit down is just like the mechanics of a jacket. Like, that is just a thing. But the idea of not being able to button your bottom button because it's like a faux pas, or it's like not built that way, not built to fit that way, is stupid. Anyway.
And the air defense, you have the best air defense in the world, and really you helped us under attacks of Russians. And I want to speak how we can exchange the licenses. We're open to share the licenses of all our drones with you, of course, with the United States, and we need licenses for quick production of air defense. Even after
he's talking about drone technology, stuff like that. He's basically willing to give the US whatever the hell it wants if he can get security guarantees against it.
We need our nation to be calm, that we are secured. So that's why we need this air shield. And of course, about this, I want to speak about the contingents. I think that France and UK already spoke to you, and we know that Europe is ready, but without the United States, they will not be ready to be as strong as we need. And the last point, last not least, about exchange, about our people and children. And you know that this crazy Russian, that they stolen 20,000 of children, Ukrainian children. They changed their names, they changed their families, relatives, and now they're in Russia. We want to bring them back, and really, it's a big dream, task, and goal for me. And the
Trump doesn't give a shit. He's like almost entirely checked out at this point. Yeah, they kidnapped, like, Russia kidnapped a bunch of children from Ukrainian families and like gave them over to Russian families and like change their identities and everything, and that's a whole other dynamic in all of this.
Our words.
Why can't Trump agree on those guarantees and then just not honor them when the time comes? Because not honoring them when the time comes would make him look weak, I guess, and how can I, like, how to say, like, why doesn't he want to do, like, why doesn't he want to give those guarantees? Because right now what Trump, like, already has said and is going to continue to say is Russia is going to respect what I say. But if Russia doesn't respect what he says, he doesn't want to have consequences for that. He doesn't want to have commitments. He doesn't want to have to put his money where his mouth is. Keep that in mind for later when Vance starts to speak, because that gets really almost comical. The cognitive dissonance between Trump saying, I'm not going to give you security guarantees, and because I don't want to have to put my money where my mouth is, and Vance later on saying something along the lines of, we need to start focusing on what the president does and not what the president says, which is like completely diametrically opposed messaging. Trump just wants to say something without having to do anything, while looking like he's doing something without having to say it. Or like while looking like he's doing something and like saying it at the same time or whatever. And if he were to give security guarantees, he would be in a position where he would actually have to put his money where his mouth is.
By the way, Mr. we released more than 4,000 warriors from Russian prison, but there are thousands more in the prison. I wanted to share with you some images, how it's, you have just Yes. Can I now?
Yeah,
Have I?
please.
Some minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. I just you to understand in what circumstances, in what situation they are, and what the attitude of Russia to our prisoners.
This is giving me like super stressed out elevator pitch that wasn't properly rehearsed and like he's put on the spot and expected to have much more time to make these arguments, and now he's like rushing because like there's like 50 cameras on him. He's like, wait a second, can I show you these photos and can I make this argument? Can I make this point and everything? And he's completely freaked out right now.
That guys, just you before and after. And you see before and after, just you to understand. Now thousands of such guys, ladies and men, there, and that's so they don't eat, they beat them. And
how similar from a Trump perspective is the peace process conducted here and the one he did with the Taliban? I mean, that's a really good analogy, actually. The one he did with the Taliban, we don't have video of the conversations happening on camera. But the one he did with the Taliban was similar. They gave everything to the Taliban. The idea of Trump being a great deal maker is complete bullshit. Complete bullshit. Unless you're arguing that Trump is a great deal maker in that he's completely self-serving and he does not give a shit about actually getting a deal that, like, he's a businessman who's in it for himself. He's not a mediator who's there to find the best deal for all the parties involved. He just wants to get the U.S. out of all of these things. He wanted to get the U.S. out of Afghanistan, and the best way to do that was just to tell the Taliban, hey, do whatever the fuck you want. We're piecing out and we're not even going to get involved. And here saying, hey, we're not going to give you any guarantees of whatever. We want to let Russia keep half of your country, and we want to get paid for getting that deal for you. But we're not going to give you anything in return. Me trying to convince my mom I need a PC for school. Yeah, that's basically the dynamic here. And it gets even more like conversation with your parents later on when it turns into a shouting match when they're like, have you ever said thanks once? And it's like I'm getting like PTSD flashbacks to conversation with my parents at that point. Like I remember that he didn't invite the Afghan government, just like seemingly wasn't planning to invite Ukraine. Yeah, no, it's crazy. He's just interested in, like, he is just making literally every single concession to the people who supposedly are the enemies of the United States and getting nothing in return for their allies. It's crazy. It's crazy.
They do a lot of bad things. So out of, even during the war, there are rules. Everybody knows there are rules during the war. So these guys, they don't have any rules. You see that 50, 60 kilograms left, and a lot of such things. And I didn't want to show you what the changes with images of children, because I will just share with you. I mean, it's looking tragic.
No, it's tough stuff.
Yeah, I wanted very much to give you
50-50 grind. Yes. I'm not saying this about my parents specifically, but something that you realize when you become an adult, when you, like, around the time that you're in university and you have to deal with people for like class projects in university, but you're like, hey, we're all adults now, we can deal with each other as adults. You realize that you never, like, people don't actually become adults. People who are supposedly adults, a lot of them still behave like children well into adulthood, well past middle age. Like, there's so many people who continue to act like teenagers for their entire lives, and that includes Trump and Vance. Yeah.
You see it?
Yeah.
This is pastor, by the way. They stolen pastors because it's not Russian church. They stolen pastors and moved pastors to the prison. We, at the end of last year, we brought 3 pastors, and we could exchange them. And this is pastor, you see.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. So I mean, this I wanted to show you, and this. So thank you very much.
We want to get that ended, right?
Yeah, of course we will.
I think we will. And
we have to, of course.
Do you have any questions, please?
Mr. President, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. How much money is the U.S. going to put into the fund that is being created today, and how does this provide long-term security for Ukraine?
Well, we don't know exactly how much, because we're going to be putting some money in a fund that we're going to get from the raw earth that we're going to be taking and sharing.
The raw earth.
in terms of revenue. So it's going to be a lot of money will be made from the sale and from the use of raw earth. And as you know, our country doesn't have much raw earth. We have a lot of oil and gas, but we don't have a lot of the raw earth.
So raw earth, for your information, is something that is really important for smartphones and new technologies, including Tesla cars. So it's interesting that that is the thing that they're focusing on, considering the position of Elon Musk, who surprisingly is not in the room for this conversation. As far as I know, at least he's not on camera.
And what we do have is protected by the environmentalists, but that can be unprotected. But still, it's not very much. They have among the best in the world in terms of raw earth. So we're going to be using that, using it for all of the things we do, including AI and including weapons and the military. And it's really going to very much satisfy our needs. So it's something that just worked out really well. We have a lot of oil, and we have a lot of gas. We have a lot, but we don't have raw earth. So this has just about every component of.
He's asked a question about the money that the U.S. is going to put into a fund to, supposedly help with Ukraine security, and he's immediately going to, oh yeah, but this is actually working out really good for us because we're getting a bunch of raw earth from this, rare earth minerals, but he calls it raw earth.
The raw earth that we need for computers, for all of the things we do, this puts us in great shape.
And the long-term security for Ukraine. How does this provide?
I think they're going to have.
Isn't Rubio also supposed to have a red tie? Yeah, the blue tie, red tie thing doesn't really matter. So red is supposedly the Republican Party color, blue is supposedly the Democratic Party color. That is a relatively new tradition. If you look at election maps from, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, they had completely different colors. They didn't always have the red Republican, blue Democrats. And it's more common for Republicans to wear red ties, and vice versa, but the opposite also happens regularly. That's not really a hard rule.
Great luck. I think once we make the agreement, that's going to be 95% of it. They're not going to go back to fighting. I've spoken with President Putin, and I feel very strong. I've known him for a long time, and I feel very strongly that they're very serious about it. And we'll make a deal. And when the deal is made, I don't think we talk about security. Everyone's talking about the other day. All they talked about was security. I said, let me make the deal first. I have to make the deal first. I don't worry about security right now. We have to have a deal because right now, last week, 2,000 soldiers died on both sides. 2,000, and they're losing 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 a week. So as we sit here and
I don't even understand what do you mean? Let's make the deal first before we talk about security. Like the deal is for security. Brain not working. I don't understand what this is even supposed to mean. It's crazy.
People are getting shot and dying on the battlefield. And, they're not American soldiers, but they're Russian soldiers and they're Ukrainian soldiers, and we want to be able to stop it. And we want to be able also to spend money on other things. We don't want to. This is a tremendous amount of money. And what the Biden administration did was terrible. They were giving money, but he had no security on the money. Europe, as you know, gave much less money, but they had security. It was in the form of a loan. They get their money back, and we didn't. And now, at least we're protected because the American taxpayer has to be protected too. But this is an incredible agreement for Ukraine because we have a big investment in their country now. And what they have, very few people have. And we're able to really go forward with very, very high-tech things and many other things, including weaponry that we're going to use in many locations, but that we need for our country. This allows us to do that.
But Mr. President,
will you continue? Sorry, I'm sorry.
Military aid. Yes, go ahead, please.
If I can just add, yes. In the document, there is one of the very important points. If we speak about business and investment, we never had LNG terminals in Ukraine. This document will open. I mean, the next document, but anyway, here we see in the framework, we see a really good will for this. LNG terminals for us is very important, and I think for security of European continent. We have the biggest gas storage. We have the biggest in Europe. Yes, and we can use it. Use it for LNG. We use it for LNG, and we will do it. And really, we can help Europe because Europe really helped. President Trump said that they made less support, but they have our friends and they are our very supportive partners. They really gave a lot, Mr. President. They did.
They gave a lot, but they gave much less.
No.
Much less.
Yeah, this is a funny dynamic as well. So you've, I don't know if you've all seen the interaction between Trump and Macron last week, where their exchange went viral because Macron fact-checked Trump live on the issue of how much. Let's see. Act checks Trump. Boom. Is it this? 2 minutes? Yeah, okay, let's go with this one.
Is France going to lift the block on the 300 billion?
We're watching a lot of Forbes today, apparently, because Forbes is still allowed in the White House.
Is France going to lift the block on the 300 billion?
Look, if we do this deal, he's not looking for more war. He doesn't mind, but I've specifically asked him that question. He has no problem with it.
Is France going to lift the block on the 300 billion in frozen Russian assets in Belgium? France has opposed unfreezing it to pay Ukraine and compensate the U.S. for its support. Is France going to lift its opposition to that?
Rubio looks way more comfortable here, and Vance looks way less like a bulldog on a chain.
This is, we speak about frozen assets. We already used them to back precisely the loans negotiated at the G7. And it's part of the sanctions, so it will depend on the follow-up of the discussions. But clearly, we respect international law. It's just frozen assets now. You can take the proceeds of the frozen assets, but you cannot take the assets themselves because it's not respecting international law, and we want to respect international law.
How is one different than the other? If you can take the proceeds from it, how can you not take
Because
the
it's very different. You keep the assets, you take the proceeds because they are paralyzed in a certain way. You take the proceeds during the wartime, but you keep the assets, and it's part of the negotiation at the end of the war. Because, this war costed all of us a lot of money. And this is the responsibility of Russia, because the aggressor is Russia.
Should the US be compensated?
So at the end of the day, this frozen asset should be part of the negotiation, all in all.
Will France support the U.S. being compensated?
I support the idea to have Ukraine first being compensated, because they are the ones to have lose a lot of their fellow citizens and being destroyed by these attacks. Second, all of those who paid for could be compensated, but not by Ukraine, by Russia, because they were the one to aggress.
Again, just so you understand, Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid.
This is the moment that went viral.
Ukraine, they get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid. We paid 60% of the total effort, and it was through, like the US, loans, guarantee, grants, and we provided real money. To be clear, we have 230 billion frozen assets in Europe, Russian assets, but this is not as a collateral of a loan because this is not our belonging. So they are. In fact, to be frank, we paid. We paid 60% of the total effort, and it was.
Okay, agree to disagree, buddy. Okay, whatever you say. No, it's obviously true. Let's see. Ukraine contributions. So as a percentage, what the hell? Okay. As a percentage of GDP, the US is 0.5% of GDP. France is 0.1718. Then you get to the Netherlands, 0.78. Sorry, 0.78% of GDP, much above the US, almost 1% of GDP from Finland, 0.8% of GDP from Poland. The Baltic states are also giving a lot. Denmark is giving, 2% of GDP from Denmark. That's crazy. Croatia giving 0.5%, which is roughly what the US is giving. So that's in percentage of GDP. But then this is the thing. You look at Europe as a bloc, and Macron is completely right. Europe gave about 60% of the total the total aid to Ukraine. The US gave about 40%. And this aid to be allocated, the promises that they haven't given yet, is way more. Actually, this is probably not like 60 to 40, but still, it's like Europe gave more, and the total to be allocated is significantly more than the commitments that the US still has that they haven't given yet. This is nothing compared to this. By the time the Europe has given everything, they'll be more than double what the US has given. So the idea that if Trump is looking like country by country, as a total, there you go. As a total, just like absolute number, and you're not looking at the EU as a whole, you're just looking at country by country, then yes, the US is by far the biggest donor. By far. If you're looking at percentage of GDP, they're not. If you're looking at the EU as a whole, they're not. But Trump is an idiot and he doesn't understand any of that. So he's simplifying to Europe is not giving anything when the reality is like individual countries are not giving something that's comparable to the US. But Europe as a whole has given more by any measure. There's no doubt, there's no debate about it. The EU has given more than the US in every single way. But he doesn't believe that. He's doing this like stupid, you think that, but like let's agree to disagree because obviously you're wrong there.
We paid 60% of the total effort, and it was through, like the US.
And then we get back to this interaction, and he's trying to get Zelenskyy to back him up, and Zelensky's like, actually, no, actually, Europe gave more.
France, and they are our very supportive partners. They really gave a lot, Mr. President. Yeah, really, they did.
They gave a lot, but they gave much less.
No.
Much less.
No. No.
Don't argue with me.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
But Mr. President,
Yeah, please.
Mr. President Trump, you have repeatedly called the deal with Ukraine as a historical one. And as a president of the United States, you make historical decisions in other issues which affect America and other world. So what place in the world history do you want to take? And do you associate yourself with any famous historical figures?
Yeah, I'd say George Washington, Abraham Lincoln. I would say I'm far superior to George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. Now, you know I'm only kidding, right? Because when I say that, the fake news is going to go wild. They're going to say he considers himself to be better than Washington. But you never know. You never know. I don't compare myself to anybody. I just have...
You know that if Trump... My cats are driving me crazy. If Trump manages to get Greenland and Panama and who the fuck knows Canada as a 51st state, he's going to want his face added to Mount Rushmore. You know that. You know he's going to want his face on Mount Rushmore.
I'm here to do a job. We've had a great 35 days or whatever it might be, a month, a little more than a month. We've accomplished tremendous amounts. Not only this would be a very great achievement if we could get the war stopped and get them back to normalization. I think that's going to happen. We've had very good talks on both sides, as you know. But I think we've done a very good job, just generally. If you look at all of the things we've done in 30 days, they say there's never been a opening for a president. The first month, there's never been a first month like we've had. And this is one of the very important things. This, to me, is one of the most important things because we have tremendous death taking place as we speak. And I don't want to have that. You know, think of the parents, whether they're in Russia or Ukraine, think of the parents of all these people being killed needlessly.
They came to our territory.
Should have never started. This would, if I were president.
Yeah, this is hilarious. That comment there again, like Zelensky's not a diplomat. Like he's completely right, but like this interaction is almost. It would be funny if it wasn't so insane.
Needlessly,
they came to our.
Like the thing that Trump is, Trump will say, oh, it's like losses on both sides. But he doesn't really give a shit about the Ukrainian losses. Even when Zelenskyy was showing him like the photos of people being released from, getting like people released from prison and stuff, and like the state of them, or the people who've been kidnapped by Russia. He's like his face, like he didn't give a shit about that. And now he's talking about like, oh, but look at all the dead Russian soldiers. And Zelenskyy pointing out, well, sorry, but they invaded our country. Yeah, we're gonna fight back. Yeah. oh, but it never should have started. Well, it started because they invaded the country, you know?
Should have never started. This would have, if I were president, this would have never started.
And Zelenskyy is starting to be extremely annoyed at this point, I think.
Mr. President Trump,
Will you
President
continue
Trump.
sending military aid to Ukraine after the U.S. signs this agreement with Ukraine?
Yeah, we're going to be continuing.
To President Zelenskyy, do you feel like the U.S. is on your side, that President Trump is on your side at this moment?
What do you think?
He wants to know, do you think that, sort of a stupid question, because I guess we wouldn't be here if I wasn't. But,
I think that the United States on our side from the very beginning of occupation, and I think that President Trump on our side, and of course, I'm sure that the United States President will not stop support. This is crucial for us. It's important for us. Yes. And Putin, the president, speaks about the people and the soldiers which are dying, but they came to our territory, they came to our land. They began this war, and they have to stop. And I think this is the question, was really the most important question. Can President Trump, I hope yes, with some other allies, to stop Putin withdraw these enemies, our enemy, withdraw these troops from our land? And I think that you asked about the history, I think that if President, or when, he will stop Putin, if President Trump will bring peace to our country, I think he will be on this wall.
we've had very, very good talks.
Mr. President,
What about military aid to Ukraine?
President Zelenskyy just said.
Okay, I'm gonna feed the cats because they're really meowing in my ears constantly. But you know, the dynamic here is crazy. The question, as soon as Trump gets asked a real question, every single time Trump gets asked a real question, he's like, "Oh my God, what a stupid question!" And this is general, not just in this meeting. Every single Trump press conference, if he's getting his dick sucked in a question, oh, that's a great question. Thank you so much. That's a really smart question. If it's an actual question, oh, what a nasty question. What a stupid question. That's a horrible question. Trump doesn't like to think about problems, to actually get, like, you know, challenged on things. So that's always the dynamic. Let me remove the noise gate so you get to hear the meow fest. Hey, we're already a third of the way through. So this was like the opening bits. I guess the last 20-ish minutes is when it gets really crazy, when Vance gets involved. But we're already starting to see like the tensions escalate with that Zelenskyy pointing out that hey, they came to our country, what the fuck? Yeah, of course they're gonna die. He's already fucking annoyed at this. Okay. Noise gates again. Filters. Trump is just way too disrespectful. I mean, yes, is that, and the fact that they're calling Zelenskyy disrespectful in response to this is the insane part. Where's my earphone?
There'll be no compromises with Vladimir Putin. I just wanted to ask both of you. Firstly, are there compromises that you think that President Zelenskyy is going to have to make? And President Zelenskyy, is there anything that you think that you may be able to offer or bring to the table, for example, elections? Thank you.
I think you're going to have to always make compromises. You can't do any deals without compromises. So certainly he's going to have to make some compromises.
God, I would love to be able to ask this question. Can someone ask, what compromises does Putin have to make in this deal? I want to know that. What is Putin not getting that he wanted at the start of this war? Other than, like, fully taking up the entirety of Ukraine, which they never claimed to want. They tried to do it for, like, the first week of the war, and then they basically gave up on that. But other than that, what is Putin getting that he what is Putin not getting that he supposedly wanted to get? Ukraine is not joining NATO. They get to keep the territory that they controlled, and like that is, those were supposedly the main things that they were concerned by. What are they not getting? Could someone please follow up with that?
But hopefully they won't be as big as some people think you're going to have to make. That's all. It's all we can do. I'm here as an arbitrator, as a mediator to a certain extent between two parties that have been very hostile, to put it mildly. They've been very hostile. There's been a vicious war. There's been a vicious war. You know, it's a very level battlefield, and those bullets go out, and as I've said many times, we were talking about it with Pete.
Ukraine not being a Russian puppet state? Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess. Like, Ukraine not being like, I guess maybe the concession that Putin had to make is that he can't put Yanukovych back in power, back in office. Maybe that's the concession. If that's the answer, then it's insane. But yeah, that might actually be the real answer here.
Many times, the only thing stopping those bullets is a human body.
What the fuck
And
does
in the
that
case
mean?
we're talking about, generally young human bodies are stopping a lot of bullets. It's dead level. That's why it's great farmland. It's great land. It's great farmland, but there's very little protection against the bullets that are being, and other things that are being shot. So all I can do is see if I can get everybody at the table and get an agreement. And I think we're going to end up with an agreement. Otherwise, I wouldn't probably be even here today.
Will President Putin have to make compromises?
Mr. President, I've got two questions for you. You think ultimately your legacy will be the peacemaker and not the president that led this country into another war and ended foreign wars? And I've got a question.
I hope it will. I mean, I hope I'm going to be remembered as a peacemaker. This would be a great thing if we could do this. I'm doing this to save lives more than anything else. Second is to save a lot of money, but I consider that to be far less important. So I hope I'm going to thank you, Brian, for that question. It was a nice question. I hope I'll be known and recognized as a peacemaker. This would be a great thing to solve. This is a very dangerous situation. You know, this could lead to a third world war. This was headed in the wrong direction. If this election were lost, if we didn't win this election, and we won it by a lot, that was a mandate. We won every swing state. We won the popular vote by millions and millions of votes. We won everything. The districts, you look at the areas of red, take a look at a map. This was a big mandate, and this was one of the things. I said, we're going to get this thing settled. If we didn't win, I think this could have very well ended up in a third world war, and that would not have been a good situation. What was your second question?
And my second question for President Zelenskyy. Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're the highest level in this country's office, and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see if do you own a suit?
Yeah, you have problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not.
Really?
I was just Googling who the fuck this guy is. Brian Glenn of Real America's Voice Network. What the fuck is that? Why the fuck does this person have a job in the White House? Like a job in the White House press corps? Real America's Voice. What the fuck is that? The chaotic overrest meeting. Brian Good, host of Real America's Voice, questions Zelenskyy about not wearing a suit. Who the fuck is this guy? Glenn is the chief White House correspondent for Real America's Voice, a conservative media outlet for over 20 years. The broadcast experience, he joined the network as a national campaign correspondent focusing on coverage of President Trump and sucking his dick. Glenn is known for his engaging reporting style and has a significant presence on social media platforms. He's also in a relationship with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yes, political reporter who's totally not in a conflict of interest covering the Trump administration. Great, good job. Good job. Fuck my life.
I don't have such. I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe one, maybe something like yours. Yes, maybe something better. I don't know. We will see. Maybe something cheaper than Thank you.
President Trump, you said yesterday. Thank you, President Trump.
I love fucking Zelensky's face there.
Yeah. Thank you.
President Trump, you said yesterday. Thank you, President Trump. You said yesterday that you have.
Are you going to send more arms to Ukraine in case there's no peace?
Yeah, we're going to have arms to Ukraine, yeah, sure. Hopefully I won't have to send very much because hopefully we're going to have it finished. We're looking forward to finishing this quickly.
Did you see the White House starting to put restrictions on which reporters can access the White House and therefore ask Trump questions? Yeah, no, they're firing every actual news outlet, and they're only keeping right wing. The fact that Forbes still has a position, that CNN still has a position for now, is like, I think the New York Times is out. Like, what the fuck is this belt here? I just realized. Jesus, it looks like WWE belt. No, it's gonna be like TASS, RT, and all of the QAnon networks like Fox News, Alex Jones, like InfoWars is gonna have a position. I don't know. I'm not actually saying that they do at the moment, but like, imagine the world where the White House press corps is InfoWars, One American News, Newsmax, Fox News, and Russian media outlets. And only stuff like that. Just like, imagine that reality. That is a genuinely a real possibility right now.
We're not looking forward to sending a.
And the only reason why Associated Press was kicked out is because Associated Press is an international news agency. Most of their clients are not the US. Most of their clients do not refer to the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. So Associated Press said, we are not going to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. We're going to stick with the Gulf of Mexico because we're an international news agency. And that is why they were kicked out as the White House press corps, because the administration that supposedly ran on freedom of speech is now policing the speech of the media that covers them. At which point does a bias turn into propaganda? At the point where this guy is literally in a relationship with one of Trump's biggest supporters, and every single question he asks is like the most sycophantic, insane pro-Trump question. Where the line is, I don't know, but like the line is like, okay, so you have like proper reporting, you have the line somewhere around here, and we are over there. Like, it's not even in frame, it's like all the way over there. We are way past it.
A lot of arms. We're looking forward to getting the war finished so we can do other things. But we very much appreciate the agreement because we needed what they had, and we're treating, our country is now treated fairly. Biden didn't do that. He didn't know what the hell he was doing. This should have never happened. This should have never started. But, sure, the answer is yes, but hopefully we won't have to send much because I'm looking forward to getting it done quickly. Very quickly.
Does that mean you'll provide security guarantees, Mr. President?
After this, you should watch the interview that Zelenskyy did with that other news agency. Which one are you talking about? I saw an interview of him on Fox News that was crazy as well, which I'm not even going to have the patience to watch the whole thing. I just saw one question after this meeting where the Fox News host was like, did you ever say thank you to the U.S.? And I was like, I saw that question. I was like, fuck this. I'm not watching it. I closed. I can't. It's too much.
I don't want to talk about security yet because
what you're saying, I'm everybody. Biden lost. Why are we talking about Biden? Like Biden is out of the White House. Trump is going to spend the next 4 years blaming Biden for everything bad that happens ever. And he's never going to get over it. It's kind of like during his first term where he was speaking as if he was the opposition party and always blaming the Democrats for everything. And it's like, you're the president, dude. Start acting like the president. Start acting like you're responsible for what's happening.
I want to get the deal done. You know, you fall into the same trap like everybody else. A million times you say it over and over. I want to get the deal done. Security is so easy. That's about 2% of the problem. I'm not worried about security. I'm worried about getting the deal done. The security is the easy part. The security is the easy part if you give guarantees. If you don't get guarantees, then it's not a part at all. Very nice. Everybody stop shooting. And now will Europe put people there? I know France is going to. I know the UK is going to. I know other countries are going to, and they happen to be right next door. We haven't committed, but we could conceivably. You know, we have security in a different form. We'll have workers there digging, taking the raw earth so that we can create a lot of great product in this.
Holy fuck. It's like, no, we're not going to commit to defending your country. We're going to commit to stealing your resources. Jesus, fuck. That's it. That is insane stuff. I swear. Oh my God, that is crazy. We're not going to commit to defending you. We're just going to commit to stealing your resources. Holy shit.
Been committed, but we could conceivably. You know, we have security in a different form. We'll have workers there digging, taking the raw earth so that we can create a lot of great product in this country. So in that sense, you have something, but we haven't determined that yet. I will say, in speaking to France and in speaking to, and they were here, as you know, last week and just the other day, they have committed to a lot of security. I don't think you're going to need much security. I think once this deal gets done, it's over. Russia's not going to want to go back, and nobody's going to want to go back.
President Zelenskyy is shaking
when
his
this
head
deal
no
ends,
at
I really
Mr.
believe
President.
this deal is going to be over.
Question?
Please go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you.
Macron and Keir Starmer at the White House this past week, both of whom praised your courage and conviction to lead the pathway towards peace.
Yes.
Part of that involved, though, re-engaging Russia in diplomatic relations, something that previous leaders lacked the conviction to do so. What gave you the moral courage and conviction to step forward and lead that?
Well, I love this guy.
God, this question.
Who are you with?
This question, holy shit. Let me play this back at normal speed. I almost want to slow it down for you.
Go ahead.
Thank you so
Mr.
much.
President, thank you.
Thank you.
Macron and Keir Starmer at the White House this past week, both of whom praised your courage and conviction to lead the pathway towards peace.
Yes.
Part of that involved, though, re-engaging Russia in diplomatic relations, something that previous leaders lacked the conviction to do so. What gave you the moral courage and conviction to step forward and lead that?
Well, I love this guy.
Sir, what gave you the moral courage and the massive schlong to do the best thing in the world what gave you the moral courage to deserve a Nobel Peace Prize, sir? And how do you sleep at night knowing that you could be doing knowing just like how amazing you are, that being, if you were only to stay awake a little bit longer, you would be able to do so much more for the world. Like, I can't with these people. And the fact that when there's a real question asked is like, oh my God, what a stupid question. When a question like this is asked.
Who are you with?
One American News, sir.
Well, that's why I like him. One American News does a great job.
Like, oh, that's a great question, man.
Who are you with?
One American conviction to step forward and lead that.
Well, I love this guy. Who are you with?
One American News, sir.
Well, that's why I like him. One American News does a great job. I like the question. I think it's a very good question. It's a pathway to peace. It's a pathway to getting something solved. And I feel that as the head of this country, I have an obligation to do that. Plus, you know, we're very much involved. We got involved. It's too bad we got involved because there should have been no involvement, because there should have been no war. And there shouldn't have been October 7th. That would have never happened, as you know.
That question could be a line from The Death of Stalin. I'm not familiar, but that question could have been a line from like Idiocracy. It could have been a line from any parody political thing where it's like the sycophantic media that is super, super aligned with the president. It's like we are past parody at this point. Parody has lost its value because the world is parody.
Iran was broke. They had no money to give to Hezbollah. They had no money to give to Hamas. They were stone cold broke. And then under Biden, they became rich as hell. They went from no money to $300 billion in a period of 4 years. And they gave a lot of that money away, and you see what happened, and that's a real mess.
Rubio is like, I really need to pee. Can we wrap this up, please? I really, really need to go pee.
Also, that we hope to be able to solve. But no, I appreciate your question very much. It's just, I feel I have an obligation to try and do something to stop the death.
Mr. President, if I can answer. Yes, if I can answer,
Please,
sorry.
go ahead.
Please.
And I do like your clothing, by the way.
Yeah, really?
Even though I have to, I think he's a
Yeah?
great guy, by the way. But I don't know if you two like each other, but you know what? I think
No,
he's dressed, I think
why?
he's dressed
I like
beautifully.
this guy. I don't know
I think
him.
he's dressed beautifully.
So I have more. I have more serious things than answer on such
Yes,
questions.
yes, that's a
I will
good-
answer on more serious
that's a good
questions if I can.
Yes.
Yeah. So please, about security guarantees and about just ceasefire. We can't just speak about ceasefire and speak and speak. It will not work. Just ceasefire will not never work because I'm like a president. I have this experience, and not only me. Ukraine before my presidency, from the 2014, Putin broken 25 times. 25 times he broken his own signature. 25 times he broken ceasefire.
But he never broke to me. He never broke to
No,
me.
you were the president.
He
You
never
were the
broke-
president
he
during.
never broke to me.
In 2016, you've been the president, Mr. President. You've been the president, but he had, of course, not with you, but he had during those period. He had conversations with our side, and we had Normandy format. You know, the France, Germany, Ukraine, and Russia, and he broken 25 times. That's why we will never accept just ceasefire. It will not work without security guarantees.
So what he's saying here is like, it can't just be talk, it has to be action. And like, again, keep that in mind for later in the conversation when Vance gets involved.
Guarantees, maybe President is right about this document and other, but this document is not enough. Strong army is enough because his soldiers afraid, Putin's soldiers afraid of our soldiers when we're strong enough. If we are not strong enough, if we are empty, if our storage is empty, we can't defend our land. Today, you know, he knows that we have all the world knows that we have meeting. Yes, why he's using ballistic? Putin today using ballistic on our hospitals, schools, and etc. Ballistic. So he knows that we are here and that President Trump is really have goodwill to stop this war. And you hear now the president. So why he's using? So he doesn't want to stop. He doesn't want. But I hope that we will do it. Really, we'll do it. Security. When we speak about security guarantees, when the Europeans are ready for contingents, they need USA backstop. If there will not be United States, we will not never have any contingents, strong contingents from the Europeans, because they don't want to divide alliance, connection between the United States as the main and strongest ally and Europeans. And this is crucial, this is important. That's what we want to speak about very much. This is very important. And air defense. So air defense, really, we have big deficit with all these systems, and we need to provide this. We need it very much. Otherwise, Putin will never stop.
It's the one thing, like, it's the one thing that Zelensky's asking. Again, like, I'm repeating myself, but, like, literally, Zelensky's willing to give up everything. He's willing to give up all the things. He's willing to give up NATO. He's willing to give up a third of his country. He's willing to give up a bunch of his natural resources, with Trump himself saying, yeah, we're going to have people digging the country to take away the rare earth. And he's like willing to make insane concessions of having his country carved up between everyone and just like fucked sideways in every possible way, as long as he can get security guarantees. It's the one thing that he's getting nothing else from this deal. He's only getting fucked, and he's willing to get fucked if he can get the security guarantees, and that is all he's like begging for on his knees.
He'll go further and further. He doesn't want. He hates us. You know, it's not about me. He hates Ukrainians.
That was the problem. Zelensky was confusing Trump with the facts. Fatal mistake. Yep.
He thinks that we are not a nation. He thinks, and he shared these thoughts. I think maybe with your team also. I don't know, but with all the Europeans, in media, officially and not, he always said that there is no such country, such nation, such language, and such life, like Ukrainian. No, he really doesn't respect all the Ukrainians, and he wants to destroy us. And you are right, Mr. President, that's 2%. This document, maybe other documents, it's a very good start, very good, but it will not enough to stop this person.
Should Russia pay to rebuild Ukraine?
Mr. President, under these...
Should Russia pay to rebuild Ukraine?
They have to pay. This is the rule. This is the rule of the war. This is the rule of the war. During all the centuries, all the history, this is the rule of the war. Who began, those pay.
Do you agree,
This
President
is the rule.
Trump?
Putin began this war. He has to pay all money for innovation. He has to pay. Of course, some Russian assets, what we have in Europe, about 300 billions, we can use them. We can use for innovation and buy military support from the United States also. We can do it, but it's not enough. It's not enough.
I asked this question that you didn't like because I wanted to know.
Brian, please, wait 1 second.
I asked this question that you didn't like because I wanted to know if you want to position yourself in the middle between Russia and Ukraine or on the Ukraine side.
I'm in the middle. I want to solve this thing. I'm for both. I want to get it solved. And it's wonderful to speak badly about somebody else, but I want to get it solved. If we can solve it, great. If we can't solve it, they're going to have to fight it out, and who knows what's going to happen. But I want to see it get solved.
May I follow up? One more question about U.S. troops in Europe. After Russian invasion of Ukraine, your predecessor sent additional troops to Eastern Europe, including Poland, my country. Are you committed to keeping these troops on the eastern flank of NATO in the future?
I'm very committed to Poland. I think Poland has really stepped up and done a great job for NATO. As you know, they paid more than they had to. They are one of the finest groups of people I've ever known. I'm very committed to Poland.
What about Baltics?
Poland's in a tough neighborhood, you know.
What about the Baltics?
The Baltics.
Do you think Trump knows what the Baltics are? No, I'm actually asking because, like, he should. If you're president, you should, especially if you're having a conversation about Russia. But do you think he knows?
What about the Baltics?
The Baltics, they got a lot of, it's a tough neighborhood too, but we're committed. We're going to be very committed, and we're committed to NATO. But NATO has to step up, and the Europeans have to step up more than they have. And
I think Trump is one of those people, like the famous, you show a world map without any of the names of the countries, and you say, hey, can you put Germany on the map? And he's going to point to, like, Australia or something. I think Trump is one of those people. I think he has no fucking clue. Even though he's supposedly traveled to a bunch of places, I mean, he, not just supposedly, he has traveled to a bunch of places, but he might only know where his hotels are. That might be the only thing that he knows about the world.
I want to see them equalize because they are in for far less than we're in, and they should be at least equal. You understand that? Why is the United States, we have an ocean in between, why is the United States in for so much more money and other things as Europe? With that being said, and as you said, they've also been obviously very helpful, but we have put in far more than they have, and I think they should equalize.
Mr. President,
please go ahead.
About the agreement today, what changed between the first time that Secretary Bessent gave President Zelenskyy the agreement and today for the signing?
We made a deal. So
what was the
deciding factor? I'm a business person. We made a deal. That's what changed.
A lot of those minerals.
I didn't think we were going to make a deal, and we ended up making the deal. So that changed.
Mr. President, when and how do you envision a trilateral summit with President Zelenskyy and Putin?
I don't know, but well, they don't like each other. I can tell you that. Okay. They do not like each other. It's not a love match, and it's unfortunate. That's why you're in this situation. The United States should not have allowed this to happen. Okay, the United States, run by a man that didn't know much. I'm going to be very nice. Run by an incompetent person, very incompetent person, should never have allowed this to happen. I've stopped wars. I've stopped many wars.
Definitely confuses the Baltics with the Balkans. Yeah, I don't even think he knows that much about the Balkans either, but he did confuse the two because, like, he must, like, generally know that the Balkans is, like, complicated, and he probably is like, oh yeah, Balkans, That's a tough neighborhood, and that's all he knows, you know.
We'll tell you, I stopped wars that nobody ever heard about. I stopped wars before they ever started. You can look at some of, I could give you a lot of nations that would tell you right now they were probably going to war. I could tell you right now there's a nation thinking about going to war on something that nobody in this room has ever even heard about.
What the fuck does, it's like, what, I don't even, okay.
Two smaller nations, but big, still big. And I think I've stopped it. But this should have never happened.
Sorry, just a sec.
I think what he's talking about is there's a country that wanted to invade Greenland, and over something that no one's ever heard about, and he stopped it because he is that country.
About any negotiations. First of all, I want really to tell you, and I think that everybody understands that Ukraine, more than Ukrainians, nobody wants to stop this war. But in the future, any negotiations, it's understandable that two sides of the war, not Russia and the United States, because this is not a war between Russia and the United States. This is war of Russia against Ukraine and Ukrainian people. So these two sides will be at anyway will be at the negotiation table. Then of course United States, like the strongest partner of the Ukraine, and of course Europe. I think Europe is very important. I want to speak about it with the president. Yes, Europe is very important for us because we really defend Europe for today. All Europeans really recognize that we are defending line, and they have real life, and our people are dying. That's why they helped us. And also, it's about the NATO. Yes, between, like the president said, you have big, nice ocean. Yes, between us. But if we will not stay, Russia will go further to Baltics and to Poland, by the way. But first to the Baltics. It's understandable for them because they've been in the USSR. You know, they've been one of the republics of the USSR, and Putin wants to bring them back to his empire. It's a fact. And when he will go there, if we will not stay, you will fight. Your American soldiers. It doesn't matter. Do you have ocean or not? Your soldiers.
Yeah, at the very least, the Baltics, not the Balkans, although maybe the Balkans too, but at the very least, the Baltics would be next if Putin gets a win in Ukraine.
Will fight.
Mr. President, would you be willing to visit Ukraine, maybe Kiev or Odessa, which is found to be at the rear of the Black Sea?
It was my question.
I'm sorry. I don't want to talk about Odessa now. Let's not talk about Odessa. I want to talk about making a deal, getting peace. We don't have to talk about Odessa, but a lot of cities have been destroyed. A lot of cities that are not recognizable. There's not a building standing.
Oh, no.
And a lot.
Is he going to shift back to the Russian soldiers who have died now? Like, I don't want to talk about Odessa. Like a bunch of countries, a bunch of places have been destroyed, a bunch of cities have been destroyed. But the poor Russian soldiers. Let's see.
A lot of things.
Mr. President, you have to come and to look. No. We have very good cities. Yes, a lot of things have been destroyed, but mostly cities alive, and people work, and children go to school. Sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes closer to front line, children have to go to.
UGPY, the Baltics are in NATO, yeah, but how long does NATO have before it completely breaks apart is the question right now. Like, NATO could actually break apart over this. Between like the Munich Security Conference speech by Vance and what's happening here, NATO could break apart over this.
Underground schools or
at the very least, even if it doesn't formally break apart, it could become a completely meaningless, like on paper coalition that is not actually a real thing anymore.
Online, but we live. Ukraine is fighting and Ukraine lives.
Well, only the US would get out, but it would like... Yes, other countries in NATO have an army, and they wouldn't be able to, like, only the US would be able to actually fight the entirety of the rest of NATO put together. But if NATO had to get their shit together, if other non-US countries had to get their shit together, it would take a long time for them to ramp up. And I don't know how NATO would respond without the US to an invasion of the Baltic states. That is hopefully a question that we won't have to answer.
This is very important. And maybe it's Putin is sharing this information that he destroyed us. No, he lost 700,000 people, 700,000 soldiers. He lost everything. Yes. So,
Mr. President,
on the minerals deal.
Mr. President, when did you last speak with President Putin, and what did he say that
A couple of days ago.
And what did he tell you that gave you the assurance that he wanted peace?
Well, that's what I do. My whole life is deals. I know pretty good. And I've known him for a long time. I've dealt with him for a long time. he had to suffer through the Russia hoax. You know, Russia was a hoax. Jesus. It was all Biden. It was nothing to do with him. So he had.
Poor Putin. It's so inconsiderate of the media to and of the FBI and the special prosecutor to have investigated my ties to Russia during my first administration, because it hurt Putin's feelings. I mean, can you imagine the poor guy? He had to suffer through that. You know, he must have been heartbroken over the allegations that I was a Russian agent. He must have been absolutely they should have been considerate of Putin's feelings when they were investigating that. Really.
He had to suffer through Russia was a hoax. It was all Biden. It was nothing to do with him. So he had to suffer through that, and he was able to do that.
He had to suffer through it, man. It was so hard for him.
I think that he wants to make a deal, and he'd like to see it end. That's all I do. That's what I do. My whole life, that's what I do, is make deals. I'm in the middle of a mess because this.
Can you imagine in the middle of that question about like the finding a deal to end the war in Ukraine? He's like, oh yeah, but like Putin, man, he had to suffer through the Russia investigations in my administration, like during my first administration. Like, it was hard for him, man. Poor guy. And like in the same meeting, they're like humiliating the leader of Ukraine, and they're being like incredibly generous and gentle to Putin. It's crazy.
This is a real mess. It's a very dangerous one. If this doesn't get solved now, it's not going to get solved for a long time. So I hope we're going to get it solved. In the back, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Prime Minister Starmer claimed repeatedly that his government believes in free speech and was not engaged in censorship. But his country's government arrests people for memes and thought crimes, and even more worrisome is pressuring American companies to censor Americans on its behalf. How can he be a reliable, trustworthy partner when he says things that are demonstrably false on such an important topic?
Well, we actually spoke to him about that yesterday, and we thought they took it very, very much too far. JD was very strong on it. So was I. So was Marco. And we've been speaking to him.
Embarrassing fucking press corps. It's crazy.
About it. Marco, would you like to say something about that?
We have concerns, obviously, with the conduct of those, particularly as it impacts Americans. And there's real concern that
he gets to speak. Cool, he gets to speak.
American speech, which is online, could fall into the hands of British or any country's jurisdiction. And so this is a point the Vice President made at Munich, and I think is a very compelling one, that what unites us with Europe, as much as anything else, is these shared values, and one of them being free speech. And so if Americans are threatened by it, we're going to need to take action in that regard.
JD? It's actually a very important question.
We spoke about this in detail with the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, and others at lunch yesterday. And I know that Secretary of Commerce Lutnick followed up in private meetings last night. This is really important. We believe Americans have the right to speak their mind, even if we in this room disagree with them. They have the right to speak their mind in the public square, which is often online these days. And we're going to defend that right as it pertains to American companies and American citizens vigorously.
Unless they're asking for funding for scientific research. Unless they're media companies who are using the internationally recognized name for a body of water. Unless they're school employees choosing the preferred pronouns and names of their students, in which case we're going to fuck them over and deny them funding. Unless they're Democrats. Unless they use the word cisgender on Twitter. Unless they try to form a union. It is like the level of hypocrisy is off the charts. Unless they release a poll result that is mistaken, in which case we're going to sue them for that mistake.
If we have to. I do think that under the President's leadership, we're going to find common ground with our friends in the UK on this question, but it remains to be seen. The principle that will guide us is we believe in free speech in this country, and we'll fight for it for American citizens.
Mr. President,
Mr. President, oil and gas component to the deal? Is it all critical
A little
minerals?
bit. We'll see.
On LNG?
But we're not really looking for that so much. We got a lot. We have more than anybody in the world, by far. So no, we're not talking about it too much, but a little bit. I think it affects also, but for the most part, no.
And sir, is there any agreement from Ukraine to purchase U.S. LNG as part of the deal, or is that on the table at all?
No. We don't need that.
Some of those minerals are in the east, Mr. President.
You just mentioned that you don't.
We don't need that. Not asking if Ukraine needs that. It's we don't need that.
To purchase U.S. LNG as part of the deal, or is that on the table at all?
No. We don't need that.
Some of those minerals are in the east, Mr. President.
You just mentioned that you'd spoken to Vladimir Putin a couple of days ago. Just to be clear, that's a new call, not the one that you were
I've spoken to him on numerous occasions.
Okay. And how was the latest call? What did you discuss? How did it go?
Are you serious with that question?
I am. I'd love to know.
It went well. I think we're going to have a deal.
On the minerals deal, Mr. President, some of those minerals are in the east of Ukraine, not far from the front lines and in areas that Russia has occupied. Will you direct President Putin to withdraw his forces from those areas if there's U.S. interest there?
Well, we'll take a look at the time. We have a lot of area. It's a very big area we're talking about, so we'll take a look. I'll study that and I'll see.
And who would protect those minerals if they are U.S. interests? Would that be Ukrainian forces, European forces?
The agreement will protect them.
U.S. forces?
The agreement, yeah, we're signing an agreement.
Right, but what?
Put a flag in that. The agreement will protect them. Keep that in mind and keep what I was pointing out earlier about, security guarantees, not just words.
What if Russia tries to invade or there's Russian aggression in those spots? What would you do?
I just told you I don't think that's going to happen. And if that were going to happen, I wouldn't make a deal. If I thought that was going to happen, I wouldn't make a deal.
Some people may wonder why.
They ought to focus on CNN on survival, not asking me these ridiculous questions.
Why you have confidence that Putin won't violate a deal?
Focus on surviving, because CNN's got such low ratings. I don't think they're going to survive.
See, like as soon as someone asks real questions, like some of the first actual, there've been a few other questions that were like relevant, but when it's sir, how do you deal with how amazing you are and how perfect your hair is? Oh my God, that's an amazing question. Sir, how do you find the mental fortitude to find a peace deal? Oh my God, that's such a good question. Sir, let's talk about the implications of the minerals that you're trying to like coerce Ukraine into giving you. What if some of those minerals are in Russia-controlled areas? Like, what does that mean, and what are going to be the real implications? You're the fake news and you're CNN, and you should focus on surviving rather than asking difficult questions that I can't figure out solutions to right now.
People will ask why you have confidence Putin won't violate the deal.
I already mentioned Poland. Poland was under Russian control for decades after the Second World War. When I was a kid, I looked at the United States not only as a most powerful country, richest country in the world, the country that has great music, great movies, great muscle cars, but also as a force for good. And now I'm talking with my friends in Poland, and they are worried that you align yourself too much with Putin. What's your message for them?
Ooh, he's not gonna like that either. He's not gonna be happy with that question.
Well, if I didn't align myself with both of them, you'd never have a deal. You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, "Hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal?" That doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin.
Wait. A week earlier, he was calling Zelenskyy a dictator and saying that he started the war. What the fuck? This is insane. This is the level of like transparently pro-Putin and pretending like that is him being in the middle is insane. It's crazy.
I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America and for the good of the world. I'm aligned with the world, and I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred, and I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. but you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
Hey, I want to respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded.
We're about to see this entire thing completely fall apart when it was already like close to being disaster before then. But honestly, if this had been the meeting, it already would have been disastrous headlines everywhere. It is about to get so much worse.
Invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions.
There it is. There it is. That is the thing. That is what they're doing right now is saying the president's words matter more than their actions. That's why we don't need security guarantees, because we're just going to have, nice words on paper and Putin's going to respect them. So we don't need to actually commit to actions. We can just have nice words.
The United States' words of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions.
That is what they're doing right now. They are pretending that the presidents of the United States' words matter more than their actions. Oh my God, that is the most infuriating thing in this entire meeting. It's the thing that drives me the most crazy in this meeting. It's that, considering the entire sticking point, the only sticking point that is making Zelenskyy trying to get a concession from the US is security guarantees, meaning commitment to actions. It's the only thing that Zelenskyy is trying to get out of it is, can I get more than words, please? I am giving away my country. Can I get more than just words from you in exchange for that? And while that is happening, he's pretending that it's the other way around. It drives me insane. Hey, Samurai Destroyer, welcome.
What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East. And
I wish that had been the point that Zelenskyy made here. And I think there's probably a language barrier and just like he's thinking of different things right now. But I wish that had been the thing that he pointed out is, yes, okay, let's stop pretending that America's words matter more than its actions. Let's actually get actions on the table. I wish that had been the thing that he had said.
And Crimea.
Although they would not have liked that this meeting would not have gone over well if that had been the thing that he said either. There was no good way out of this meeting, but I wish that had been the point that he made.
So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014.
2014 is
2014.
Yeah. So
Excuse me, sir. I know when my country was invaded. Thank you very much.
I was not here.
Yeah, but
that's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him. Me, like a new president, in 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not strong...
Mr. President, with respect...
What does that mean? What does that mean? What are you talking about? Like we've already talked about how frustrating all of this has been for Zelenskyy since the beginning. And none of this means anything. Like pretending like the words matter more than the actions matter more than words. And then he's like, okay, pointing out all of the inconsistencies and the fact that, hey, like, these are the facts of why we need more than just words. These are the facts of why we need security guarantees, because Putin doesn't respect ceasefires. These are the examples of when he broke a ceasefire. So what kind of diplomacy do you want to do that is going to prevent that from happening again? The kind of diplomacy that's going to stop the war and prevent the destruction of your country. That doesn't mean anything. You're not saying anything. What the fuck are you talking about? What are... It's so fucking infuriating.
I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing...
Ooh, he's big mad. He's big mad.
...conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to...
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring people, you bring them on a propaganda tour.
I don't need to go to Ukraine. I've been on Twitter, and I've seen Russian propaganda posing for Ukrainians on Twitter. So I've seen all the stories that I need to see.
Mr. President, do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of.
Can I just become a Minecraft channel? Can I just, you know, I'm just gonna rebrand into Barely Craft and just do Minecraft all day. That's gonna be my channel from now on. I can't.
Questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You
Don't-
will not
you
have
gotta-
a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on this
position to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly what
this.
I'm not
You're
dictating.
in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
You
We're
will-
going to feel very
you will
good.
feel influence.
We're going to feel very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the
bad
very
position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From the
it.
very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a
Brown,
good position.
I
You
was
don't have
in
the cards right now. With us, you start
I'm
having
not playing
cards. But
cards.
right now, you
I'm
don't.
very
Yeah, you're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
He is so done. He is so fucking done with this meeting, honestly. Like, I'm not playing cards. I'm very serious, Mr. President. He is so fucking done with this. He's... Yeah. To be honest, I'm too. It's...
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's
with
back
all
to you.
respect to your
Far more than a lot of people said they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once? This
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You
Like,
went
I want to live comment this, but it's like I can't even say anything at just like how disgusting this like 2v1 interaction is, where again this was someone who was willing to give away so fucking much in this deal. All he needed was guarantees. All he needed was, hey, we've been fucked over. Like he said, the 25 times apparently 25 times that Putin violated deals that he signed with Ukraine. And he was like, hey, I just need you to commit to actions if this happens for a 26th time. That is the only thing that I'm asking for in exchange for giving away basically the future of my country. Like, my country is going to be significantly worse off economically speaking because you're going to steal a bunch of my resources, and a third of my country is going to be occupied and kept by the country that invaded us, and they're going to get zero consequences from this. And all I'm asking for is guarantees. And when he's pointing out the reasons why that is necessary in admittedly a non-diplomatic way. Like that, let's be clear, Zelensky is not a diplomat, and perhaps a trained professional diplomat would have been better at wording those. But that's all he's trying to do. And when he actually points out to them, when he points out to Vance how that's not going to work, he gets them both like big mad. Oh, they're mad now. Oh, now they're just gonna go the oh my god, that's you're being disrespectful to America for pointing these things out. You said thank you once? It is, oh my god, it's so disgusting what's happening here.
To Pennsylvania and campaign for the opposition in October, offer some.
That's what it's about. That's what it's about. It's because he campaigned. Because he took part in he had conversations with the Democrats during the campaign, and because he was also part of the thing that caused Trump's first impeachment. It wasn't even his fault. It's that Trump, in a phone call with Zelensky, was asking Zelensky to investigate Hunter Biden, and that phone call became the source of his first impeachment, and Trump is big mad about that. And they're furious that Zelensky would have preferred a Democrat to win, because honestly, the Republicans and the MAGA movement and Trump are pro-Putin, so of course he would have. But he's not even saying that he would have preferred that to win, but they're furious at the idea that he interacted with the Democrats during the campaign.
Words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
You're not winning this. You have a
Stan, it's disgusting. They don't know anything. And if they did, they don't care. So there's no point in trying to make any sense of it, because there's no sense. Yeah, exactly.
damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our countries.
You have a good chance of coming out okay because of us. Coming out okay is, again, for the 15th time, third of the country gets taken away and kept by Russia, and a big chunk of their resources gets taken away by the US with basically nothing in return other than Russia, for now, agrees to withdraw with the possibility that they might come back because there's nothing preventing them from coming back. That is the deal. That is them coming out okay.
Staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military equipment, and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment,
you invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I tell you.
To say thank you.
I said a lot of times thank you to American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those.
Yeah, and by the way, where the fuck is this $350 billion idea coming from? The US gave 114 plus commitments for an extra 5 billion. The total amount of European commitments and already allocated plus US is 350 billion. Is that correct? So it's 132.3 plus 115 plus 114.2 plus, how much is this? 4.84. Yeah, he thinks the US gave away the totality of what's been committed when Europe gave away more than 2/3 of it. More than 2/3 came from Europe, and he thinks that's all the US. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American.
And this thing, it's like this is the, it was their decision to do this in front of the American media. And the reason he got mad and the reason he started saying things like, we're just trying to prevent your country from being destroyed, when he had nothing to answer to his actual points. And when he was like, did you even say thank you and you're being so disrespectful right now, is because he knows that he's wrong and he knows that he's right. But they can't stand that.
People to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. You're people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I wanted this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
You'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement. Yeah, okay, great. But the ceasefire doesn't work. That's why we're still fighting, because there was already ceasefires.
That wasn't with me. That wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person. That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is, Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry.
Wait a second. Tobias Fuchs, are you the Business Insider journalist?
Tough deal to make, because the attitudes have to change.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks peace talks? What do we do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you saying?
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
Never mind then.
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden, because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt.
Jesus. Again, poor Putin. I mean, the guy. There was a witch hunt. He was really sad. It made him really sad. We need to make it up to him.
Where they used him and Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go.
That has nothing to do with the current situation. But holy shit, how much of an unbelievable crybaby he is to be bringing that up right now. And to be bringing it up as a poor Putin in this whole situation. It's insane. It's insane.
Go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting. And then they said, oh.
And again, like, Hunter Biden had nothing to do with any of this. Hunter Biden is not a politician. You know, even if some of the accusations against him are true, which is like, oh, maybe he used his last name being Biden, maybe he used that in business to enrich himself and to get like lucrative positions in various companies, which is possible, that is possible. But the insane allegations against Hunter Biden that go so far beyond that are just like, so much of it is made up. Like, there's so much insane stuff about Hunter Biden, like the Biden crime family and all of that, that is wholly unsubstantiated, but they're going to cry about that forever, forever.
The laptop from hell was made by Russia. The 51 agents. The whole thing was a scam. And he had to put up with that. He was being accused of all that stuff. All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe. Maybe he did. I don't know what happened. But he didn't break them with...
My God, that's such a good point, Noah. Yes, that is such a good point. Like, have you said thank you to us? Have you thanked us for sending you all the weapons that, by the way, we shouldn't have sent you because Biden was wrong to send you those weapons? But have you thanked us for that? Because we shouldn't have sent you those weapons, but you should still be thankful. It's so true.
With me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once...
And he did say thank you. Yeah, he did say thank you. But this thing is just like it was already bad before Vance got involved, but it like completely collapsed.
Once we signed that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think?
What's this negotiation going to look like?
This is going to be great television, I will say that.
That was wild.
All right, we'll see what we can do about this.
That was wild. That was wild stuff. It's even worse than I remembered it being. Holy shit. No, that's I don't even know what to say. Okay. Guys, I need to get back to editing the AfD video because I wanted to have it out as soon as possible. So, okay, what it's looking like right now is I'm making some really good progress on the next video. I wanted to have it, like, basically every day, like, I've wanted to have it ready in 2 days, and every time I've been pushing it back because, like, I'm struggling to finish the... What happened was, to give you the full context, it was supposed to come out on Sunday, and on Saturday, I was making really good progress. I was on track to have it ready on Sunday, and then Saturday night at, like, 11 p.m. midnight, I realized that the central, most important section of the video fell apart. Like, there was some significant things that were wrong with it that I needed to completely redo, and basically my my momentum, the progress that I was making in the video, just like wall, video, boom, like unmovable objects. This was not an unstoppable force. Completely stopped my momentum. So I had to reshoot that entire section, and I've been chipping away at the rest of the video, but like I was in full 24-hour grind mode until that point, and that basically broke me for the rest of the motivation. So I'm just like working instead of being 24-hour grind mode, I'm just working at normal pace, which is why the pace had slowed down significantly. But I'm hopeful that I can have it ready either on Tuesday evening, which right now is the goal, or the problem is Wednesday. I have a panel talk with the screening of the Iran video, which, by the way, I privated because we're gonna re-release the better cut that we made for the festival. So we'll re-release that at some point. But yeah, Wednesday I have a panel talk with the screening of the video and of that Iran video from a while ago. And if I can't release the AfD video on Tuesday, I'll have to release it on Thursday. I think it's going to be Tuesday, but there's a possibility that it'll be ready on Thursday. I'm going to, if you want a little bit of a spoiler, I'm going to show you a 2-minute section of the video that I was rendering today to test out some of the effects, and that'll be the closing of the stream today. You interested in that? Can I get ones in the chat if you want a quick spoiler of the video with a 2-minute section. Okay, bunch of ones. Give me a sec. Let me just undo the thing that I did for this video. It was mono for desktop audio. Okay, cool. Okay, there we go. So turn this on, boom, and let's go.
Unlike other European countries whose far-right parties can be traced back directly to the fascists and the Nazis of the 1930s, in Germany, it's not so straightforward. That's partly due to the efforts led after the end of World War II to denazify the country by dismantling Nazi-associated organizations, holding trials for prominent Nazis, and barring former Nazis from being involved in politics. And even though those efforts were wildly insufficient and unsuccessful, and thousands of former Nazis continued to be active at high levels of government, the military, and the courts, denazification in Germany at least had the merit of having been attempted, which is a low bar, but it's a bar that neighboring countries like Italy and France didn't even clear. I mean, hell, even Austria's far-right party FPÖ, this is one of their founders. Germany's constitution includes some of the strongest language of any constitution in the world to try to ban the existence of anti-democratic parties, which is nice to have on paper, but someone needs to enforce those rules, which was occasionally done. Two parties were banned back in the 1950s, the neo-Nazi Socialist Reich Party and the Communist Party of Germany, and some smaller neo-Nazi groups have been outlawed since, like the Action Front for National Socialists, or ANS, founded by Michael Kühnen. When the ANS was banned in 1983, he joined another neo-Nazi group called the Free
I love this logo.
Groups have been outlawed since, like the Action Front for National Socialists, or ANS, founded by Michael Kühnen. When the ANS was banned in 1983.
Look at that flag, seriously. It's like, I have a name for these. These are swastikants. It's just like, how do you make a swastika that isn't technically a swastika? And can you get away with it, legally speaking, when there's laws that, you know, ban swastikas? I just love these. They're so funny sometimes.
He joined another neo-Nazi group called the Free German Workers' Party, or FAP. And when he was removed from that one, he formed another neo-Nazi group called the German Alternative, or Deutsche Alternative. I'm sure that's a coincidence. There's definitely no relation. FAP and Deutsche Alternative were also banned in the 90s, but they were closely associated with another neo-Nazi party called the National Democratic Party of Germany, or NPD, known today as Heimat, or the homeland. And 2017 was the last attempt to date to try to ban a neo-Nazi party when a court ruled that Heimat, then known as NPD, although they were found to be anti-democratic and therefore unconstitutional, they also ruled that the party was too insignificant to warrant a federal ban, and they're now simply banned from receiving public campaign funding. The point is, for 80 years, neo-Nazis have been organizing and reforming and regrouping under different names and different banners, each time testing how far they had to scale back their rhetoric and aesthetic before it became different enough from the Nazis and therefore acceptable under German law.
And that's it for now. So obviously this, wait, let me just turn the camera back on here. That's not the only part of the video that's done, but that's the only part of the video that I rendered out to test out some of the effects, because I can't play them at normal speed in my editing software. There's a glitch in the frames around being involved in politics in the transition. I'll look into that. Yeah, that's what I was saying, Tobias. I don't know if you were there in the interview that I had before, but yeah, essentially the AfD was founded as a libertarian neoliberal party, and in the first couple years you started to see like the ethno-nationalist faction starting to appear in the party. So the party was founded in 2013. 2014 there was an official faction in the party called the Patriotic Platform. That was an openly ethno-nationalist faction in the party, but they were small. 2015, you have Björn Höcke and the Flügel, which is the radical wing of the party. It's, let's be honest, the neo-Nazi wing of the party. And they have been basically doing a hostile takeover of the neoliberal libertarian party since 2015, and now they're like a significant force in the party. There still are neoliberals and there still are libertarians in the AfD, but they have been either forced to leave the party or beaten down into submission and into tolerating the fact that they share a party with open neo-Nazis, as open as you can be in German politics. That is essentially the history of the last 12 years of the AfD, is an hostile takeover by neo-Nazis of a libertarian party. But I do find the coincidence of a neo-Nazi group called German Alternative in the 90s as like, I do think that's really funny that they just took that name, even though it wasn't founded as a neo-Nazi party, the Alternative für Deutschland, initially. Yeah, Alice Weidel is kind of an enigma because it's hard to tell, because she is supposedly the moderate wing of the party, in theory, but the reality is it's hard to tell if that is a mask or if she's actually moderate and tolerant of the fascists, or if she is like a fascist who is good at putting on the mask of a moderate. That is the part that is kind of, we're not in her head, so we can't really know. But the number of dog whistles coming from her, especially like this one, days after Elon Musk did the "my heart goes out to you" thing, while she was having Elon Musk on the phone at that AfD rally. It's too much, man. It is way too much. And the Hitler mustache and the flyer and all of that, it's so much, yeah. Yeah, so definitely 100% videos coming out this week. Starting in half an hour. Hopefully Tuesday. I think worst case scenario Thursday. But yeah, I'm really gonna do everything I can to have it ready on Tuesday. So, and definitely if you're members on Patreon, I will be uploading a bigger chunk of the video earlier on Patreon before the video comes out on whenever it comes out. Basically, I'll upload everything I have ready by tomorrow night on Patreon, and hopefully in the morning, on Tuesday morning, I can like finish the rest of it and put it out in the evening on Tuesday. Okay, gonna stop it there, and I will see you very soon for a special stream when the video comes out on the main channel, and yeah, we'll take it from there. So see you soon, and have a good night. Thank you, Noah.